Okay, it is 6:02, and I think we're going to start. Bill is going to be a little bit late. So I'm going to call this meeting of the Town of Hingham Select Board to order at 6:02 p.m. on February 17th, 2022. This meeting is being held remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, temporarily amending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the Town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify the chair at the start of the meeting in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, so that the chair may inform all other participants of said recording. Is there anyone else recording the meeting this evening? Seeing none, I will move to our next order of business, which is approval of the minutes. I am prepared to take a motion on the February 3rd minutes.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes dated February 3rd, 2022.
I will second. Roll call vote. Liz?
Aye.
Joe? Aye. And Bill is absent. And I should note for the record that Liz Klein and Joe Fisher are participating in the meeting this evening, and we do expect Bill Ramsey to be joining us. Moving to the February 8th minutes, Liz, I did have one correction that I believe should be made. Do you have the minutes there?
I do.
So at the top of page 7, it was edited to read, Ms. Sutton added that members of the committee are not required to be Hingham residents. I believe it should say Ms. Hutton added that not all members of the committee are required to be Hingham residents, because some are required.
Okay.
Are you okay with that change?
Yes.
Okay, so that sentence will read, Ms. Sutton added that not all members of the committee are required to be Hingham residents. With that change, I am prepared to accept a motion to approve the minutes of February 8th.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes dated February 8th, 2022 as amended.
Seconded. Roll call vote. Liz?
Aye.
Joe? Aye. They are approved. Next order of business is to consider the request of Bertucci's Restaurant LLC, doing business as Bertucci's Brick Oven Ristorante, 90 Derby Street, Hingham, Mass, for a change of manager from Erin Landaverde to Soraya Rosso. And I apologize if I mispronounce names. Is Miss Rosso on the phone, on the line with us? She is. You got to unmute yourself. I made the request to, oh, there you are. Her hand's raised, but she's still silent. Is there anyone else on the line from Bertucci's that is not silenced that would be prepared to speak? Does anyone have her cell phone number that we can reach out to her? Tom?
That's what I was just going to suggest, is that I could read off the phone number perhaps for this Zoom call.
I wouldn't read off. Oh, the
And
number.
she could dial into us.
Right, perfect. So if you can hear us, Tom, do you want to read off the number?
Sure. The telephone number to dial in is 929-205-6099.
Hi, sorry, this is Soraya. I apologize about that.
Well, we hear you, we don't see you, but hearing you is really all that matters. So
Okay, perfect.
Thank you for being here. So if you don't mind, just explaining to us the reason for the change manager, and I'm assuming that all of the appropriate reviews have been done. I'll ask Tom about that in a second, but if you could just explain what's going on here.
Yeah, sure. My previous general manager got promoted and I got promoted to become general manager.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And any change in the menu as a result of the promotions?
No, but we are running a limited time menu right now with a Food Network chef. So that's exciting for us right now.
Great. So in terms of the licensing authority certification, I've reviewed it and it appears to be in order. Tom, in terms of the all alcoholic beverages licenses, is that in order? Are you muted now, Tom?
I am. It's been a while since I got caught with that.
It's a contagious condition this evening. Okay.
It is. Yes, it is all in order, and the Corey check passed. No problems.
Okay. Liz, any questions?
No question. I reviewed the package. No questions. Thank you.
I have reviewed the package and I've tasted the food and I also have no questions. Are there any members of the public with comments or questions? Seeing none, I am prepared to accept a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the request of Bertucci's Restaurants LLC, doing business as Bertucci's Brick Oven Restaurant, 90 Derby Street, Hingham, Mass, for a change of manager from Erin Landaverde to Soraya Rosso in accordance with the application for change of manager filed with the town of Hingham on January 24th, 2022, subject to the approval of the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission.
I'll second that motion. I do not yet see Bill, so we do our roll call vote. Liz?
Aye.
Joe? Aye. Approved. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Rosso.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Yes. The next item on our agenda is to consider a reserve fund transfer related to Straits Pond. And I see Emily Sullivan has just turned on her camera. So Emily, if you would please review for us what is being proposed.
Sure. Hingham is a participant in something called the Straits Pond Technical Advisory Committee. And that is a technical advisory committee that was initiated in 2007 and is related to the management and possible improvement of Straits Pond. Straits Pond is part of the Weir River estuary. It is on the border of Hingham, Hull, and Cohasset. So in addition to Hingham's participation on the advisory committee, Hull and Cohasset also participate with a multitude of different state and federal stakeholders. In the past, Hingham has been asked to financially contribute to the management or improvement of Straits Pond. In 2007, the manual title gate was upgraded to an automatic title gate. And so since then, there have been various projects and maintenance requirements and operations requirements, annual operations requirements. But really, Hingham has participated or financially contributed to Straits Pond on an as-needed basis. And so historically, the breakdown of contributions between the three communities is that Hull contributes 50% of the cost, Hingham contributes 25%, and Cohasset contributes the other or remaining 25%. So last year, Hingham contributed $5,000, and that was mostly in response to having to upgrade sensors for the automatic title gate. This year, the 25% contribution that Hull is asking for is, oh, thank you, yes. It's
So
great to have the visual. I appreciate that. Maps
This
are
is
great.
what we're talking about. Okay.
And so if you look right near Victoria's sub shop, that's actually where the title gate exists.
Yeah.
But so this year, Hull has requested Hingham's 25% contribution be $21,148, which is unexpectedly higher than what Hingham has contributed in the past. And that has to do mostly with some sediment surveying and environmental improvement work that was undertaken for Straits Pond over the past year.
So Emily, do we have a budget that shows how the funds will be applied? And do we have a reconciliation of how funds in past years have been applied?
So that's a great question. We do have a breakdown of how the approximately $21,000 would be used. I'm just pulling that up now, but just to talk about how the funds have been applied historically. So that's a bit unclear. It seems like there was some intent for municipalities to contribute annually to the operational costs, but it doesn't appear that that's actually been implemented. So all I can say for sure is that Hingham did contribute $5,000 last year for, like I said, updating and upgrading sensors for the automatic title gate. So for the $21,000 that is being requested from Hingham this year, funds are being used for restoring the automated function. I guess the title gate, the automation has been broken, for lack of a better term, but so they're looking to repair the automation. There's subsequently, they had to do some assessment on the hardware of the gate, some assessment on there's a secondary or auxiliary gate. And so they had to do an assessment on that. And then I mentioned there was a sediment survey done. Essentially, there's sedimentation within Straits Pond that is impacting the flushing of the pond. So it's not flushing to the extent that it should be flushing. And so the sediment survey was done to investigate how to remediate that. And then there's some costs that have been applied just, or would be applied to there's a stipend that's given to Hull for coordinating these maintenance operations and possible restoration efforts.
I don't know how to ask this. So when the town of Hingham makes its contribution, do we confirm that the other towns have also made their contributions?
So I'm not sure.
I can do that, Joe.
I think some.
Tom, were you going to respond or?
Oh, no, I was just saying, I'm sorry. I was saying I can do that. I can confirm with town manager Lemnios and Hull that all communities have participated their share.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, Emily. Okay. Liz, I'm not sorry, Emily, are you finished? I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay. Liz, any questions?
Great, thank you, Emily. I think I read in the packet that the automated system is currently being repaired and should be complete by this March. Is that
Correct? Yes.
target? Okay, so the 21,000 is for those repairs, or is that an additional project?
No, so it's for those repairs, and it's also I mentioned sediment survey, so the funds would be applied for that survey too. So it's okay. I would classify that 21,000 as being repairs, some investigation services, and then the annual operational costs for the title gate.
Okay, so the 5,000 last year has already been spent, and the 21,000 is for FY22.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay. Okay, and just because I haven't been involved with this before, when you say the money goes to Hull, who actually manages it? Is it Hull's Conservation Commission or?
Yeah, so the conservation agent in Hull is the main point of contact for this work.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you.
I mean, just to follow up on Emily's question, who oversees the funds in Hull?
So I do not know for sure. We could check previous, I guess, invoices that we've received from them and see who's listed as the. point of contact.
I can
Tom,
say over there that they have a little bit of a less of a bureaucracy over there. It's
Right.
a much smaller town. The town manager is directly involved in this program. As a matter of fact, he was one of the main proponents of the work that needed to be done directly. So I will speak about all of that with Phil and make sure that I get reports on the management of the program as it progresses.
And so it's also Cohasset's involved. So, and they
Yes.
also pay their 25%. Great.
That's right.
Okay. Any member of the public have a question? I have one other question, and Emily, it's probably best for you to answer. Does the Hingham Conservation Commission need to issue any permits associated with the work that's going to be done?
So no, not for the work that's done has been done or will be done in fiscal year 2022. The Technical Advisory Committee has brainstormed some ideas for future work, and that future work would likely require permits from the Conservation Commission.
Great, thank you. Seeing no other questions, I am prepared to take a motion on the requested transfer of funds.
I will make a motion to recommend a transfer from the reserve fund to Conservation Commission expenses, repair and maintenance grounds in the amount of $21,148.
Second, looking around to see if Bill is here. I do not see him. I will do a roll call vote. Liz?
Aye.
Joe? Aye. It is approved. Emily, thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You
Thanks,
too.
Emily.
Next item on our agenda is to review 2022 annual town meeting warrant articles. I'm going to move first to Article BB, which is the reduction of speed limits. And I believe J.R. Fry and Sergeant Kilroy are here. I will start with J.R.
So good evening. I don't have a screen sharing capability, but I don't think it's necessary right off the bat. The warrant article in question proposes or puts the question rather to the town of Hingham if they will accept as municipal law the section of Mass General Law, which is Chapter 90, Section 17C, and that allows or gives authority to the select board in this case. It gives the authority to the select board to assign a speed limit of 25 miles per hour, either townwide or on such roads as the select board deems appropriate. So I prepared a memo on that and provided it to the select board. I will say that the warrant article as written provides that the recommendation for a reduction of the speed limit should be made from the traffic committee for the select board's review and approval. And that's the only difference from the strict language of the law. And along with that, within the memo, I had proposed a policy to guide the decision of the town should they choose to accept this language. Now, with that said, the warrant article simply allows us to accept the language or allows Hingham to accept the language. It does not reduce the speed limit. That would come at a later decision of the select board. The policy itself that I had proposed for consideration was to set speed limits of those streets which have a functional classification of local by MassDOT to 25 miles per hour. And then to also apply the 25 mile per hour speed limit within the downtown district. And I provided a map that indicated that that was the map that the traffic committee approved to identify the downtown district for a reduced speed limit. And finally, there are certain roads which are characterized as arterial or collector. However, due to the incidence of traffic accidents on those roads, they have either extreme vertical or horizontal curvature that prevents proper sight distance. There are certain roads which we would also recommend 25-mile-an-hour speed limits. Those come at the recommendation of the police department to the traffic committee.
Can we put up a map that will show which roads we're talking about?
Sure,
I
it
can do
should
it.
be
Jared, just
The-
direct us.
17C. That's the one. So even in this zoomed out view, you can see a couple different colors. The green colors are state highway layouts. On those roads, the town does not have the authority to change the speed limit. The yellow colored streets are the downtown district. So if you zoom in there, the yellow colored streets are the downtown district. So those would have, the recommendation would be that those streets would also have a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit applied to them. Now, if you zoom in a little tighter on that, you'll notice that there's a distinction between what are considered arterial and local streets. The arterial and collector streets are slightly heavier. They would include Lincoln Street outside the downtown district, Central Street and Main Street and Water Street outside the downtown district, East Street, of course, which turns into Main Street, 228. That is obviously a collector and arterial. So those heavier lines would remain either at the statutory 30-mile-per-hour speed limit, or where those roads have already been, have already had a regulatory signage applied to them. For instance, there are certain sections of 228 which are signed to 40 miles per hour. So any place with a regulatory speed sign, those would remain in place and would not be changed by what the select board would choose. The lighter toned roads are designated local, and that would be the primary application of this. So all of the lighter toned roads would have a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit assigned to them. It would be a statutory speed limit, fully enforceable, and we would the implementation of that would involve the procurement of signage where people are entering neighborhoods generally, that would alert them to the new statutory speed limit.
Okay,
And that map can be made available to, we can put it on the website for people's information.
to what extent, JR, has this been socialized? Do the residents of the affected streets, have they been informed? Do they have views that they've expressed to you one way or the other?
So we've received generally positive feedback, especially from several neighborhoods where we've received quite a lot of commentary and frustration that there wasn't a means to reduce the speed limits in their neighborhoods. So this provides the town an opportunity to satisfy some of those existing concerns.
Okay.
My expectation is that there are probably the only people disappointed by this, by the implementation of this, would be people who actually live on arterial streets, but who would prefer it if the speed limit was generally applied in a broader sense.
People who want the speed limit reduced to 25 miles on roads in addition to the ones that you're recommending.
Precisely.
Okay, got it. So I noticed that we are joined by Bill Ramsey. Have you placed a really low speed limit on his street just to make sure that everything's okay there?
19 miles an hour.
Okay, I'm going to start with Bill to see if you have any questions or comments.
Yeah,
Good to
well,
see you.
thank you for that, Joe, and thanks, JR. A couple of things. I was on the traffic committee for many years before I joined the select board, and the one comment, the one request we would constantly field from residents was a request to try to reduce speed, not only on these streets but throughout the entire town. So I'm familiar with these areas in town, and when you said these residents were generally in favor, JR, I would kind of generally say I think it's overwhelmingly in favor. I think residents who want the speed reduced. 25 is a good start. I'm 100% in favor of this article, and I would ask, to the extent possible through you and Sergeant Kilroy to continue speed reduction measures and traffic calming measures within these areas to the extent possible, to just keep pedestrians safe and traffic safe within these areas. We've had a lot of motor vehicle accidents. We've had some pedestrian accidents, a lot going on in this part of town. So thanks for your work on this article, JR. I know you did a lot of hard work here, and I appreciate it, but I'm 100% on board. Thank you.
Is Sergeant Kilroy on the phone, on the line?
He is.
Okay, I should have asked Sergeant if you had any comments you wanted to add to what JR has presented.
No, sir. We just, like Mr. Ramsey had said, we've been working on this for a long time. It didn't go without a lot of thought put into it. And we do think that the residents, the areas that will be affected are definitely residential areas for the better. So I think it'll be a nice improvement to the safety of these neighborhoods.
And if we, assuming that we move forward with this, what would be the timing and how, in terms of implementing the regulation and sort of promoting it so people are aware?
So to begin with, once the language is accepted by the town, we would notify MassDOT, and then we would put the proposal first to the traffic committee, and then it would be approved by the traffic committee and forwarded to the select board for approval. Right. And it would likely be the same policy that I've outlined. And we'd prepare that list of streets so that upon approval by the select board, we would forward that to MassDOT. And at that point, we would also order signs and apply for a shared streets equipment only grant that would provide the funding for the new signage. And I would imagine that we'd start receiving signs within 2 weeks, and we'd assign one of our DPW crews to begin placing them along the neighborhood entrances, which is really where they would go. And we'd also put up, the police and DPW have our signboards. So the signboards would go out generally to inform people entering the town that we have adopted the statutory 17C speed limit, and they should be aware of lower speed limits in neighborhoods.
Do you have assuming that there's a positive vote today, I'm trying to get a sense of when residents would see any impact. Are we talking April, August? I'm just trying to get a ballpark sense of timing.
Sure. It has to be after town meeting, and it would then have to be after a traffic committee meeting and a select board meeting. So, but with that in mind, I would say that you could start seeing some results by the end of June.
Great, thank you. Liz?
Great, thank you, JR. Related to the timeline, I thought I saw something about having to do an engineering study. Is that a required step or has that already been completed?
So that was our reasoning for actually avoiding the acceptance of the language in section 18B. Because the way that MassDOT has directed regulation of the implementation of that particular language, it still requires an engineering study on any road that you intend to reduce the speed limit. So rather than encumber the town with that additional effort, we've elected to go with this route to start. And if additional changes need to be made and we think that's appropriate, then we can approach that in the future.
Okay, great. And is there an opportunity to change the speed limit if certain areas need it like 20 miles per hour as opposed to 25? Is that an option?
So what we would have to reduce it further than 25, we would have to go ahead and do that engineering study, and we'd also have to demonstrate that it was warranted.
Okay. Okay, great. And you mentioned the grant, so that would cover, or what is the likelihood of getting that grant to cover the signage?
I would say that there's a very high likelihood. The Shared Streets program is MassDOT's just kind of opened the spigot on that one. And
okay, great.
When I inquired about that, they said yes, it's absolutely a favored project.
Great, thank you.
So just Liz, to further answer your question, section 17C by statute, the limit is 25. It can't go below that.
Okay.
Under that section. Are there any members of the public with comments or questions? And can we end the screen share so I can see who's on? Okay, great. I am seeing none. So I'm prepared to accept the motion. This is on Article BB.
I'd make a motion to recommend favorable action of Article BB.
Second.
Roll call vote. Liz?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And Joe? Aye. It's approved. And just, I know I noticed for the record before that Bill has joined us, but I'll make it clear that members of the select board participating from this point forward are Bill Ramsey, Liz Klein, and myself, Joe Fisher. Next item on the agenda will be Article G, which is consider a transfer from the Stabilization Fund. I believe we have Michelle. I don't know, Michelle or Tom, do you want to kick this off?
Sure, I can kick it off and send it over to Michelle. I'll just read the language of the proposed article. It's slightly different than what was added originally to the warrant, and slightly different from the usual annual stabilization fund article language, but Michelle will walk us all through that. So the article now reads, will the town transfer a sum of money from the stabilization fund and or from available reserves for the purpose of reducing the fiscal year 23 tax rate and or for the payment of debt service and or capital expenditures, or act on anything relating thereto? So Michelle, if you want to walk everyone through what that means.
Sure, thank you, Tom. So as Tom mentioned, this is an annual or a perennial warrant article, but as part of the Sustainable Budget Task Force, we were looking for different sources of funds to help us close the FY23 budget gap. So one of the things that the group talked about and the report mentioned was looking into the stabilization fund to see if we can accelerate or use the rest of the funds that are available in that fund in FY23, rather than stick with the plan where we've applied a smaller amount each year to reduce taxes. So right now the balance in that account is $2,161,425. And we're proposing that we apply that to the FY23 budget in a more general way this year. We've specifically in this article talked about applying it to repay debt service and capital expenditures included in the operating budget.
Okay. Can you, in terms of the sources of those funds, are they restricted in a way that would otherwise prevent us from moving forward with what's being proposed in Article G?
I don't believe so. From what we can find out, because this fund has been in existence for a long time, previous warrant articles have talked about the proceeds from the sale of real estate and from bond premiums being deposited into this account. And part of the reason why we're proposing that they be directed towards repayment of debt service and capital expenditures is to be consistent with those sources, if that's actually what's in the fund right now.
Okay. I do know that we have our town council, John Coughlin, on the Zoom call. Anything, John, that you wanted to add? I think Michelle has done a superb explanation, but I'm opening it up for you if there's anything else you wanted to add.
Sure. No, that's a good summary. I think the stabilization fund is under Chapter 40, Section 5B. Once the fund is established and funded, it can be used for any lawful purpose. In this case, the purposes that we're intending to use it for would comply with both the stabilization fund statute and to the extent that any excess bond proceeds or real estate proceeds are in that fund anyway, which we're not sure about. Even the use of those funds for these purposes would be allowed. So I think we're good on all grounds.
Great. And Michelle, assuming that we move forward with Article G, and those funds would be essentially immediately available, what impact does that have on the future in terms of what we have projected for the following years in terms of revenue coming in? Because once we bring it in right now, it will not be available for future years.
That's right. So what we have done in recent years is use about $178,000 towards the budget. So that's what we, in our 5-year forecast, we're projecting doing that out through 2035, I believe. So those funds would not be available for that small reduction in future years. But we recommend using them to help close the large budget gap in FY23 ahead of, anticipating potentially proposing an override next year.
Great, thank you. Liz Klein, any questions?
Thank you, Michelle. No real questions. I mean, this is something that we looked into during the Sustainable Budget Task Force process. At the completion of the report, we hadn't yet confirmed if this was a viable use of this money. So I'm glad that we were able to confirm that, and it's a positive answer. I think it's a good use of the funds that we certainly need now in the operating budget.
And Liz, am I correct? These are funds that the town is holding. We're not having to generate new revenue. This is revenue that the town currently has. Correct. Great, thank you. Bill.
No questions. It's been explained to me, the use of the funds, why we're using it to address the shortfall in the budget, and I'm comfortable with the transfer.
Great, thank you. Are there members of the public with comments or questions? I am seeing none. So I am prepared to take a motion on Article G.
I will make a motion to amend warrant Article G regarding a transfer from the stabilization fund in the form attached hereto, and to approve said warrant article as amended.
Second.
Roll call vote. Liz.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
And Joe. Aye. It is approved. Thank you. Now, Tom, we have 2 other articles to consider here. But I understand that there was a request to hold on both of them until 7 p.m. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So with that, I am going to move to the next item on the agenda, noting that we will return to finish this item in several minutes. The next item on the agenda is to consider opening the 2022 Annual Town Meeting Warrant for submission of, looks like 2 additional warrant articles, Article GG and Article HH. And on Article GG, that is the real estate transfer tax. Michelle, would you like to speak to that?
I think Tom's going to kick it off and
Or Tom?
we'll go
Okay.
back and forth.
I will be, yeah, I will be transferring it to Michelle momentarily. Just as a, to start this off, you know, Liz just commented that, and Michelle, that the stabilization fund was one concept that came from using the stabilization in that way, something that came out of the Sustainable Budgeting Task Force work. This is another one, and our next proposed article also comes from that effort. This is, I just want the town to be aware, right? Sometimes we do these studies and then we pat ourselves in the back, put them in a folder and throw it up on a shelf, and then never to be seen again. But that is not what's happening here. The Sustainable Budgeting Task Force did fantastic work. They did it in short order, and we are employing their recommendations here as recently as or as soon as a couple of weeks out from receiving it. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I think they did great work. This article is a proposed article that will allow us, in essence, to lower the tax burden, lessen the tax burden on our existing residents, seniors, the folks that might otherwise really feel the pinch of the need for additional taxes, given what I've discussed several times in meetings of, we have the higher burden of municipal services. The cost of municipal services is significantly higher than it ever used to, and it's outpacing our ability to raise revenue to fund them. And as a result, municipalities all over the country are being faced with the need to raise taxes more and more and more. And this is a direct attempt at avoiding that scenario in Hingham. So with that said, I'll let Michelle kind of walk us through the makeup of what we're proposing and some of the reasoning why, and then just she'll turn it back to me real quick, and I'll kind of walk through a step-by-step proposed process. So Michelle?
Thanks, Tom. So as Tom mentioned, this is something that the Sustainable Budget Task Force talked about quite a bit. This idea was submitted to the task force by 1 or 2 residents who had seen other towns pursuing a similar option. And the task force recommended further study of this option. After some internal discussions here and looking at some data from the assessing department, we are proposing a potential real estate transfer fee for this year's town meeting. We made a quick slide to go over some of the parameters. Let me just bring that up. Everyone see that okay?
Yep.
So join the presenter view.
It's fine.
Is that clearer?
Mhm.
Okay. So basically what we're proposing here would be a 1% fee on the purchase price for real estate transactions in town. Paying this fee would be the responsibility of the buyer. And as Tom mentioned, we're proposing to structure it this way so that it is not a burden on current residents in town. We discussed a possible exemption in the amount equal to 80% of the median assessed value. So let me talk about this for a second. We were looking at a way, we were targeting about $500,000, which is a number that some other towns have also proposed in their legislation. We did not want the number to be static. So by pegging it to the median assessed value, that will change over time, likely grow over time. So the exemption amount will increase as assessed values increase in town. And the way that would work, there's an example down below where we look at the annual number of sales. This is based on a little bit less than the average over the last 3 years of 475 sales. If you look at the average sale price over the last 3 years, that's a little bit over $1 million. 80% of the median assessed value is the $562,000 number there. You would subtract that amount from the sale price, whatever it was, and the fee would be applicable to the remainder of the sale price. So in this example, using the average, the amount subject to the fee would be the 481. You'd apply the 1% fee to that amount. And when you look at that in aggregate across the 475 sales in town, we could expect about $2.3 million if it was structured this way, using FY21 data as an example for what could have supported the FY23 budget, for example. Using the 80% of the median assessed value, that $562,000 number, is well above the maximum affordable housing prices in town. So it would not, basically all of the affordable housing sales would be exempt under that amount. It's also proposing an exemption like that is also a way for us to give a break to folks who are buying on the lower end of the housing market in town. So if you bought a house for $600,000, $700,000, you would not have to pay the fee as the buyer for the first $562,880, regardless of how big or small the purchase price is. We also were looking at structuring it this way because it still would generate enough revenue to the town to really be able to help us offset some of the projected revenue shortfalls in the coming year. And to Tom's point, to hopefully reduce the need for further tax increases to current residents going forward. And mechanically, one of the ways that it would work is the buyer would have to pay this fee to the town and obtain a certificate from us, and that certificate would be needed for them to record the deed when they closed on the sale. So that's how we would ensure that the town was collecting this. John Coughlin helped us draft this language based on some other examples. He could better speak to some of the technical pieces of it, but this is in generally how we were planning or proposing to structure this potential real estate transaction fee.
If I could just jump in and just add a couple of small pieces. One, we are proposing this to be unrestricted revenue for the community. And two, I think what is before the board tonight would be to add this article to the warrant, and then I'm not sure how the board will want to proceed, Joe, but perhaps vote it at another meeting or support or otherwise as you see fit. But that would give you a chance to evaluate the town's response to the proposal.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is that we would vote to open the warrant to allow this to be introduced, but not necessarily vote this evening on, if you will, favorable action on it.
Right.
I'm not clear, maybe you can direct me. I don't see on the vote list where we have a vote to open the warrant for this. If it's there, I just don't see it. So we'll need to address that after we get the questions
Okay.
going. So I will start, Liz, with you, Liz. Any
Great.
questions?
Thanks, Tom and Michelle. You did a great job explaining this. This is certainly something that we discussed as part of the Sustainable Budget Task Force. As Michelle said, it actually came in as an idea from residents through the online feedback form, which we thought was really intriguing. And so definitely looked into it, looked at benchmark towns that are doing something similar. And then our recommendation was to look into it further. So some of the feedback we've heard so far are, to have an exemption to protect people wanting to come to town and being on the lower end of the housing market, to protect affordable housing, and also as a way to protect current residents that have already invested in town, and preventing multiple overrides, more frequently. Another suggestion that I received today was to talk to surrounding towns. Some of the benchmark towns that we've seen are places like Brookline, Concord, but the suggestion was to talk to other towns in the South Shore to see if there's kind of a regional approach to this that would make sense. So I think that's a great idea and something that we should look into. I am certainly supportive of opening the warrant, and I'd like to collect some more feedback from the public if we can over the next week or two.
I thought you were going to say you wanted to collect some more revenue.
Well, always, always. So, I mean, this is a good, it's a balance, right? There's a lot of
Yes.
competing requirements. We want to
Yes.
invest in the town. We want to keep, taxes low and stable, and this is a way to increase revenue. So it's certainly worth exploring in my view.
Yes. Bill,
Yeah, so a couple of different questions. So I guess on the affordability side, Michelle, you mentioned the exemption amount in 562, and you said that would allow affordable home buyers to still be able to buy in town. What is the affordable? Is it 350? Is that the amount?
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay, the 350 is the amount. And Tom, for the use portion of it, you mentioned unrestricted. I know we discussed about it, but just for the public, what would that mean? So people wondering how it could be used. Could you explain that in a little more detail?
Sure. So that means that in any given year, we could use it to as unrestricted purpose for unrestricted purposes, meaning we could the capital budget, maybe we could throw it anywhere into the operating budget as needed, and or perhaps on years when we have sufficient revenue due to perhaps new growth revenue, we would be able to use it for large capital items or other article items that often come up during the course of the year. So by unrestricting it, we give ourselves the flexibility to apply it appropriately in any given year.
So, I mean, a couple of points here. So, to Liz's point, people who are concerned about, going forward with, additional overrides, this is a good solution to that. I mean, it's going to give us additional revenue where we could solve that problem going forward. Number one, individuals worried about first-time home buyers and people trying to move in here to keep the town affordable. Obviously, the exempted amount at 562 would help to address that. Also, I want to point out the 1% is borne by the buyer, not the seller, right? So it's the seller, it's the buyer with a 1% fee is assessed on. The seller does not have the fee. So there's a lot of important information here that I hope individuals take into account. My last question is, I know that Michelle and Tom, I know you had a meeting with our legislators about this specific issue. When we first looked into this issue, maybe about a year ago, Tom, I think me, you, and John Coughlin had a conversation about this even before the task force was set up. And when we looked into it, Tom, I think Representative Machino mentioned that a lot of these bills and different communities who were proposing this, the legislation was stuck in the legislature. Did they give you any insight into why that was and why these bills were lingering in the legislature and what the cause of that was?
They did not. What they told us was that what we're proposing is a home rule petition. They said that we should structure it the way it would work for our town, and that they would hope that the rest of the legislature would see that for what it is and allow us to do what we feel is in the best interest of our community. So they didn't opine on why the others were stuck, Bill, but that's what they suggested. That's why we're unrestricting it.
You remember the conversation we had and we
I
got
do.
the information? There were like 6 or 7 towns that were trying to do the same thing and they were held up for various reasons.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. And as you pointed out at that time, there is actually one that is in place and actively being employed right now out in Nantucket, where they've tied it to land bank purchases. So there are different ideas for different in different towns, but yeah.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, so following up on your comments and questions, I know that the transfer fee that's being proposed in Concord was introduced in the state Senate in April of 2021. And it's, as of February, as of actually today, it was reported out favorably by the committee in the Senate. So you're right that there's certainly a lag. That's approaching a year to get legislative approval there. The proposal in Concord has the funds designated for affordable housing. I believe that is a common theme that the legislature has seen. CHAPA, which is the Citizens Housing and Planning Association, they've been lobbying the state legislature to have these sorts of transfer fees that have the revenues be targeted to affordable housing. So I think there may be some interesting legislative action going on as we proceed with our proposal.
If I could,
Please, Bill.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. If I could ask one other question too, Attorney Coughlin, when, and again, a year ago when we were kind of brainstorming this issue, I remember you had raised a concern about the Registry of Deeds possibly having an objection here. And when I mentioned Nantucket Martha's Vineyard, you said, well, you know, Dukes County, Nantucket, those Registry of Deeds, you know, they service those Pacific Islands. Here, we may have a problem crossing different counties, or you had a pretty valid concern that you don't seem to have now. Do you remember what it was that we discussed?
I think the way we addressed that, Bill, was that this fee will not be collected at the Registry of Deeds, so there's no additional burden on the registry to collect the fee and then remit it to the town. They have to come to the town to collect the fee and get a certificate similar to a municipal lien certificate. They would have to bring that with them to the registry to record, but it also has a provision that if anybody records a deed without the certificate, the deed's still valid, and we have collection rights to collect the fee after the fact in the same way that we would collect a real estate tax. So it kind of takes the registry out of the mix so that they don't have to really put additional resources into this. They don't have to collect the fee. The town would do all of that work. So I think that's the way we tried to get around that. I was concerned about having the registry have to single out a single town in the county and try to collect a fee just for us. And we just decided not to go that direction.
Great, thank you.
So the way it's being handled in the Concord legislation is that, just as John described, the town would have to issue a certificate, and then in that case, it's the Middlesex South Register of Deeds. They are not allowed to record or register a deed unless the deed is accompanied by the town's certificate. And I think that's what we would anticipate here.
Right, and there is language in the event that let's say a clerk at the registry misses it.
Right.
There is language that, and this is in most of the other bills, that the recording of the instrument remains valid. We're not going to unwind a sale after the fact, but the town would then have the right to collect that fee from the buyer through all the procedures available to collect real estate taxes, which would mean we could put a lien on the property and we could collect it that way. So there's a fallback in case it slips through.
I will tell you, at least in the proposal or in the legislation that I've seen for Concord, they do not have that out. If without the certificate, you simply can't record it, and if it's recorded, it's not valid. So we'll see what happens with that one. Are there members of the public with questions or comments? I am seeing none. The task force really has done the town a service with this proposal, and I'm really excited that this could be a viable and fair source of revenue for the town to be tapping into. So this is great. So in terms of a motion, I'm going to make the motion to open the 2022 town meeting warrant for submission of warrant article GG, real estate tax fee and and to close the warrant.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call vote. Liz?
Can I just ask a question? Sorry,
Sure.
Joe.
Yeah.
I think there's Article HH we were also going to consider.
Correct, but that we're actually, we may be, we haven't discussed that one, so I was not going to include it in this motion. We can do a
Okay.
separate motion for Article HH.
So we'll reopen it.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Sorry.
So is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Liz?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Joe? Aye. Okay, we have inserted Article GG. Now we can move to Article HH, which is to consider reallocating borrowed but unspent funds for completed capital projects.
Michelle will walk us all through this. one.
Michelle, please explain this one.
Sure, I can take this one. A few weeks ago, you considered Article U, I believe it was, where we talked about authorized but unissued debt. And that was more of a housekeeping
Yes.
item where there weren't real funds being talked about. Well, our finance team went back and this article is actually borrowed but unspent funds that are remaining in capital accounts from completed projects. So there are 4 school projects that have been completed, and we've verified with John Ferris that there's no funds needed to complete any additional work. And the total amount remaining from those 4 projects is $1,101,000, $791.28. And so what we're proposing to do in this article is take all of those funds and reallocate them towards a different capital project. We're proposing to put them towards the Plymouth River School windows project that was previously approved by town meeting, and that would reduce the amount of funds that the town would need to borrow for that project. So further offsetting our cost for that project.
And just to make clear that reallocation is consistent with the original funding that was approved and for which that money has been collected.
The money was approved and collected for 4 separate school capital projects. So we felt like it was appropriate to apply it to other school capital projects. It needed to be applied to a capital project for which the town could borrow.
Right.
And the Plymouth River window project is a borrowing.
And this transfer does not violate the terms of the borrowing.
No, it does not.
Okay, great. Tom, anything you wanted to add?
Oh, thank you, Joe.
Liz, questions?
Thank you, Michelle. So just to confirm that these are funds that were borrowed in the past and those projects came under budget,
That's right.
right? And so these are unspent funds. Yeah.
That's
Okay,
correct.
great. Thank you.
Bill,
I have no questions.
are there members of the public with comments or questions? Seeing none for this article, which is Article HH, we're going to do it in 2 parts. First, I'm going to make a motion to open the 2022 town meeting warrant for submission of Article HH to reallocate borrowed but unspent funds for completed capital projects and to close the warrant.
Second.
Roll call vote. Liz,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and Joe. Aye. And then I'm willing to accept a motion on favorable action on Article HH.
I make a motion to recommend favorable action of Article HH.
Second.
Roll call vote. Liz,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and Joe. Aye. Approved. Thank you. We can now move back to the unfinished business for the 2022 Annual Town Meeting warrants that need to be covered, starting with Article R, which is the Public Safety Facility. This is for funds for pre-construction costs. And is Bill Garrity on and is Paul Healy on? I see Paul. I don't really see him. See his image, and do I see Mr. Garrity?
He is on. I see him. Bottom right.
There he is.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Paul Healy here. Bob Garrity is floating around out there somewhere.
By the way, it's Bob Garrity, not Bill Garrity. So that's my cousin.
Okay, Bob.
Okay, let's see, thank you very much for moving this item up to where it is right now, because we had incorrectly scheduled a meeting for 7 o'clock, which is our usual day. So I'm not sure if all the building committee members will attend, but I guess my first order of business would probably be to try to convene a meeting of the building committee for the purposes of having all of us be able to participate in this discussion. If there isn't a quorum, then Paul and I will carry the ball.
So
I believe we have a quorum.
how many do you have here?
I believe we have a quorum.
Okay,
Okay, why don't I just call the names out and we can see who's here, just for the record. We have Paul Healy,
Paul Healy, aye.
Joe Kelly. Okay, Telly Lauder,
Aye.
Bruce McAloney,
Aye.
Donna Smallwood,
Aye.
Andy Touche. And I'm here, Bob Garrity. So we do have a quorum.
Yes.
So we will open the meeting and tie into the select board's meeting. So,
Bob, Gary, Joe, I was muted. I'm on the telephone. Sorry.
okay, so that's Joe Kelly is on board. So he's another one on board too. So, Mr. Chair, do you want us to just go ahead and make a presentation and we can open it up for discussion and questions?
that would be great. I just want to first ask Tom Mayo if there's any introduction that you wanted to make before I turn it over to Bob Garrity.
So I've seen Bob's notes. He intends, I believe, to give a pretty thorough accounting of the actions to date. So instead of stealing his thunder, I'll let him take the ball.
You can always steal my thunder if you'd like, Tom.
After you, Bob.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think what I'll do is try to go through a quick summary of what the building committee has been doing in the past 18 months and bring it up to the current date and what our request would be in the warrant for additional compensation for design services to get the entire project through the design completion stage and not proceed with any requests for any construction funding at this time. Okay, so the building committee was appointed in the summer of 2020. At that right around the same time as we were appointed, the design firm of KBA was also, they were also contracted with by the town in order to do a feasibility study and a conceptual plan for what the size of a building would have to be and what it would look like in order to replace the police headquarters and to replace the North Fire Station into a combined facility. So the KBA moved ahead, took on that task, did a terrific job. The building committee's role was to oversee portions of KBA's work so that we would know enough to be able to answer the main question that was posed to us initially by the original enabling statute for us, which was the building committee had to determine whether it was feasible to build the proposed facility at 335 Lincoln Street parcel, which the town had already procured an option to purchase on. So we went through all the information KBA prepared, and it was very thorough. We looked at all the different characteristics of the site, whether there was hazardous materials out there, where the utilities would be, what the conceptual design would be of the project to make sure that it would accommodate a combined building. And in order to do that, we had to get a pretty good handle on how big the proposed building was going to be. So after considering all that information, our building committee did vote unanimously that it was feasible to build this particular building at the 335 Lincoln Street site. The town then went ahead in the November 2020 special town meeting and appropriated funding to purchase the site. And of course, the town went ahead and did in fact purchase the site. The building committee then, during the winter of 2020, we started really focusing on what the conceptual design would be of the project and all the different characteristics of the existing site to identify utilities, to identify areas where we might need easements, curb cuts, what we would have to discuss with Mass DOT, because of course Route 3A is a state highway, and perhaps most importantly of all, how we were going to solve questions about egress and ingress to and from the site, particularly for the emergency vehicles. And we had to take into consideration, try to figure out how we were going to handle the parking needs, what those parking needs would be, and all of the above, basically. So we went ahead and went through as much information as we could get. And then before the spring meeting of 2020, Springtown meeting of 2020, we went ahead and realized that we had to negotiate an extension of KBA's conceptual design feasibility contract. So we went through the motions to procure proposals from KBA. We analyzed those proposals, went back and forth, and we drafted up a contract that we successfully negotiated with KBA on behalf of the town to lock in KBA's services for providing all the services, all the design services that were related to continue the design and to eventually oversee the construction. All of this, of course, was subject to future town funding. At the same time, we also procured the services of an owner's project manager, which is a statutory requirement in the Commonwealth for any large public building. And an owner's project manager essentially watches everything the design team does, questions it. They pretty much run the project as a consultant, but on the town's behalf. They bring a lot of expertise to the project and they run the project through the design process and the bidding process. And then when it gets to the point of actual construction, their role is much heavier because they would actually provide the on-site services that are necessary to oversee the construction and make sure it's all done right, and that all the billings by the designer and the contractor are all in accordance with the requirements of their respective contracts. And they would make recommendations to the town on whether invoices will be paid and so on. So we went through that process. We ended up identifying a firm, Hill International, which is a very well-established OPM firm doing a lot of public work and a lot of private work. And they're a nationwide firm, but they have an office up here. And we ended up going with Hill after a pretty thorough procurement process. And we negotiated a contract with Hill to perform the services the owner's project manager would have to perform throughout the whole design of the project, the bidding of the project, and the construction administration. So we negotiated those two contracts, and then we went to town meeting in 2021, and we obtained the money the funding to prepare to proceed with the design. So that means we would trigger and be able to execute the design contract with KBA as well as the OPM contract with Hill. And we would authorize those two entities to proceed into a much more thorough design of the project. The first phase is to do a schematic design. And the second phase was to do what we call design development, which is a much more thorough process of developing the design. And then we were essentially going to stop. And that's what we were told we had to do at town meeting, and that's what we got the funding for. So we executed the contracts, and Mr. Coughlin, John Coughlin, was important in reviewing all the contract documents. And we executed the contracts with KBA, or at least Tom executed the contracts with our recommendation of with KBA and with Hill. And we were off to the races, basically. So we started right into the schematic design documents. And when we, just a little bit of terminology, if I can. Again, the first major design phase is schematic design. The second phase is design development. The third phase, and these are all, of course, progressive. The third phase is to prepare construction documents. And at each one of these steps, the design is getting increasingly more complicated and detailed, and quite frankly, easier to price eventually. It's more work to price it, but you have a much greater comfort level on what the building is going to look like, what the building is going to be comprised of, and what the ultimate estimated cost would be of the building. So we go from design development into construction documents. And after construction documents, you have to make some really final documents to get the project ready to bid. The Commonwealth is a very complicated bidding process when it comes to buildings. So you have to make sure all the requirements in the contract are consistent with what's required by state law. And then you bid the project. And then ultimately the contracts also would provide, very specific requirements of what the designer would have to do during the construction process, as far as making sure that the right equipment and materials are installed in the project. And the same thing for the owner's project manager, that they have to make sure that the designer does his job in doing everything, and they would actually be very heavily involved in the construction oversight. Now, one important point I want to kind of fix with you is that the fees for the designer and the owner's project manager are specifically written into the project on a phased basis. So for completion of work during a particular phase, the designer and the OPM are entitled to get the fees that have been negotiated and that are already in binding contracts between the town and the KBA and the OPM. So what that means is that we have numbers. When we negotiate the contracts, we have very specific numbers for the fees that will be paid for the designer and the OPM through all the phases of the project, including construction, in the event that this project makes it all the way to construction. So let's see. So the design of the project right now, we completed the schematic design probably about 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago now. Then we went into the design development phase. We have received the final set of design development documents from KBA. It's currently being reviewed by the OPM as well as the owner, and I'm sure the police department and fire department can certainly have access to it if they want. But basically, this is a very thorough and voluminous set of documents that KBA has that we're currently reviewing. The documents are, just to give you a handle on how thick they are, I guess, or how comprehensive, is the documents of 150 what we used to call blueprints, but architectural or engineering pages as well as schematic descriptions of all the different systems that will be in the project and the types of materials. They're not at the point that they will be when you get into the construction document phase, because that will be even more specific about all the different types of materials. But it is a really very comprehensive set of documents. And that's what we're currently reviewing. It looks like we'll be approving them over the next couple of weeks. Let's see, as far as the cost of the cost estimating process that we're going through is, we did this during the schematic design phase, and we are doing the same thing at the design development phase, and we will do it one more time at the construction document phase. Is both KBA and the Hill, the OPM, have independent cost estimators. So separate independent cost estimators who conduct a very thorough review of the documents during the particular phase of work that has been completed, that they're being asked to review. After they both come up with those two independent costs for the construction costs, everybody gets back together again and they do a reconciliation of the two different estimates, because invariably one estimator will carry a somewhat different number for some different component of the project, and the other estimator will do. So they basically sit in a room together and they hammer out a reconciled estimate, and that reconciled estimate is usually the estimate that we the owner would end up going forward with, saying, okay, we approve these design documents at this phase, based and the estimated construction cost going forward is this amount. So right now the documents have been submitted. The design development documents have been submitted to the cost estimators. We're expecting that they will have the independent cost estimates, one from KBA and one from Hill, will come into us within 2 weeks. Then there's going to be the reconciled estimate that we're expecting we'll have at the end of the first week in March. So it's really right around the corner that we'll have, the best estimate we can do under the circumstances based upon the design development documents. Now, at that point, the design itself will pretty much be stopped. We still have some money where we'll be able to do a number of things that will have to be done on the project let's just an example to tie up some costs that we might have to incur as we go through the permitting process, which I'll get to in just a moment. So we do have some money to keep stuff going along, but from the design perspective, we will have reached the point where our funding was basically based upon. So we'll put on the brakes. So at this point, we are requesting in the warrant article, we are requesting approximately $1,585,000 in order to continue the design of the project through the construction document phase, through the bid document phase, and through the types of services that both the designer and the OPM would typically perform in preparation for the bidding of the documents. So we're not asking for any money for construction services, but we would be asking for this amount of money of $1,585,000 to essentially complete the design and bid documents. Now that money those amounts are comprised of, nearly all of it is the precise amounts that we already have written into the contracts we already executed with KBA and with Hill. for performing the services they have to perform by contract under the phases of the contract, the design that we haven't gotten to yet, namely completion of construction documents, bid documents, and final bidding procedures. The KBA would, of the $1,585,000, KBA would be earmarked for receiving $1,340,000. Hill would be earmarked for receiving up to $195,000. And we would also request that we include a contingency, what we'll call a design contingency, for $50,000 to give us some capital should there be additional services that are not required under the contracts right now, or they're really unanticipated design or engineering services that we have to incur as we get to the final bid document phase of the work. So it could be additional, just as examples, additional soil testing that might come up, additional utility connections, something like that. So we really should have some sort of a small, relatively small contingency, and that would bring the total up to $1,585,000 for what we would request to try to finalize the design of the project. Now, a couple of key features of the design that I think are worth talking about is the, let's see, during the schematic design, which has already been complete, and the design development of the design development documents, we had to basically take all the programmatic information that had been developed for the project for what the police department and the fire department were going to need as far as space needs. And we re-reviewed all that information in a tremendous amount of detail. The designer then takes all that information and develops a design for a building that will implement all those different requirements to make sure that we've got everything covered for what the police department and fire department have established are appropriate requirements to carry out their program, the programs that they will be operating out of this building. Now, we've had regular meetings like throughout the whole schematic design and design development phase, what we call working sessions, attended by the police department and the fire department representatives, and the designer and the OPM, and usually a member or two of the building committee would sit in on those different meetings. And I think it's fair to say that all parties are really impressed with how well the project has gone along. The police department and fire department have been extremely professional and reasonable about throughout this operation, and so hasn't the fire department. Basically, it's working really well. It's a good project. I think we're all impressed with the skill and professionalism of KBA and the skill and professionalism of Hill. Everybody brings something to the table here, and so far it's working really, really well. Some of the features of what the design is going to look like, the building is, it's going to be a 3-story building. The slope of the building, of the land, runs down from the 3A level, Route 3A or Lincoln Street level. It runs down gradually toward the MBTA parking lot and then toward the ocean.
Excuse me, Bob.
Yeah.
Do we have something that we can put up on the screen and share? I think it would be helpful if you're going to go into this description so that people can visualize it. At least it would help me.
I'm not sure. Is anybody from KBA present here?
It's 2 from the street, Joe, and 3 from Essington in terms of height, story-wise.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Yeah, I'm not going to go through too much of it. I just want to give a real quick description.
Sure.
I do have, I know Paul Callis from Hill is on the call. I had asked someone from KBA, one of the architects, to be on board, and I'm just not sure yet if they, yeah, but if you can hear me, folks, try to find some of the descriptions of the architecture, what it's going to look like basically, and what the massing will be. But I just want to give a couple of general thoughts, so those folks can be thinking of that and they can chime in right after I finish it up. But basically, it's going to look like a two-story building where it faces the Route 3A. It'll just be two levels there, but on the back side that faces the MBTA parking lot, it will be three full stories. Now, the size of the building started out at the schematic design phase. It started out at 56,525 square feet. Now, I think about halfway through the schematic design phase, we decided, we being the building committee and the town administrator, that it was time to take a really intensive effort to see if we couldn't review every aspect of the footprint of the building and each floor to try to determine if there were ways to cut back on the 56,000 square foot that we brought into the project at the schematic design phase. And we worked with the police department and fire department. Again, they were very reasonable. We had productive meetings, and I'm happy to say that we managed to get the building down to the current square footage of the design, which is 48,920 square feet. So we ended up reducing the size of the building by about 7,600 square feet, which was 13% of the square footage of the building. Okay, here are some pictures here.
Yeah, Bob, sorry, this is Sean from KBM here. So I'll sorry to cut you off, number one, but I'll just do a quick rendition of what we're at with all of these items here. But so this would be the current rendition that we have for along 3A, the front elevation along 3A, which is the, lack of a better term, the fire department side of the building. And then looking at the rear of the building, this is along Essington. So as Paul noted earlier, this is the 3-story elevation along Essington, and then going back to the 3A elevation, about roughly 2 stories. Materials, brick along the lower elevations and some sort of metal panel material on the upper elevations, and a flat roof option. And lastly, this is the corner of Shipyard and Essington, looking up towards 3A. This portion, oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, your pictures aren't changing at all.
I'm sorry, I just got a text from my associate here. My apologies. Give me 1 second, sorry.
Yeah, this is Sean Schmiegel from the architect's office.
You can see this here?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, my apologies. So this is the corner of Essington and Shipyard. Again, the lower level elevation, majority of brick masonry. Upper elevations, the gray material is a metal panel material. And then really this whole portion here on the left is the police department. And then the lower level along at the back portion is the the police department as well. And then the upper elevations here, fire admin. I will go back quickly and stop share. Sorry, I'm jumping around on you guys. So you didn't see the rear elevation. So this is the rear elevation along Essington, a 3-story elevation here. So everything to the left here is police. Lower level on the right side of the main entrance along Essington is police as well. Behind this tree here, sorry, is the Sally Port. And everything on the upper 2 stories is the fire department. Back to you, Bob.
Thank you, Sean.
Okay. On one important point is that we have had preliminary meetings with the Conservation Commission and even more significantly with the planning board to try to get their feel for how the plans could be improved throughout the design and the design development in particular. The meetings have been good, and it looks as if we probably aren't going to have any significant zoning related or setback issues or anything like that. It looks like all our parking requirements are in pretty good shape. Oh, by the way, the building also includes a 2-level parking deck. It's an exposed, it's not all closed in, it's a 2-level parking deck that will make up, what is it, about 89 vehicles that will primarily be the vehicles that will be used by the police department and fire department personnel. And then there'll be parking for the public around certain portions of the building. We'll have a lot of screening, a lot of greenery, maybe some walls, like small walls and different landscape architectural features. But all of that seems like it's coming together really well. We did have an important set of meetings starting about a month ago with the planning board, where a couple of members of the planning board who are assigned to be the liaison to this project made the point that they felt that the design of the building as of a month ago, with the roofs in particular, were peaked, and they had concerns with the massing of the building. And what came out of that is they thought that we should consider using making the roof entirely flat rather than with peaks, because that would decrease the massing, the perception of massing, I guess. And I'm not an architect, I'll let Sean handle that. But the perception of massing, reduce the massing to make sure it was well in line with all the different buildings in the whole shipyard area. And they also suggested that we change the exterior facade that Sean just showed to what he just showed, which was basically to try to reflect more of the kind of historical nautical shipbuilding history of the area, which of course most of us take a lot of pride in. And we did that, and that was a change to the design. We asked KBA to make those designs pretty quickly, and they did a great job in just the last month. And the current design development, and by the way, our initial responses that we've received have been very, very positive from the planning board. So that's all real good news. So we've incorporated those. The committee approved those as a design change at the very end of the design development packages, and the current packages that we're looking at, we're reviewing and going to be estimating will reflect the change to the facade as well as the flat roof. Okay, just a word, and we can get in a lot more detail. We've also had a lot of discussions on green energy use initiatives, primarily with the Hingham Net Zero folks. And we've had I think we've had a good relationship with them. They've reviewed different proposals we had. Our mechanical engineer of record has put together for the different types of systems that would be used in the building, and what the power sources were, what kind of energy conservation resources we would be using. We got back to them. We've had a couple of meetings. We've got a couple of more meetings in the next few weeks to go through a couple of the loose ends where we're not quite seeing eye to eye. But overall, it's been a good relationship. It's been a continuing relationship. I guess the good news is that pretty early on, we identified that we would use in electrical power to like heat and cool and power the vast majority of the building. 93% if you want to calculate it on a square footage basis. Let's see, so in the electric power, we're assured by our friends at MHLP, will be produced and generated through green energy sources. So to us, that translates in about 93% of the building will be operated by green energy. We have a couple of areas where we're continuing discussions with HNZ. I think I've scheduled a meeting in about 3 weeks with them to see if we can hammer those items out to their satisfaction. If not, then we'll just have to make a decision on our perspective is what's the most practical and efficient method to utilize to power the different portions of the building. And if we can at all do green energy, that's fine. But if the engineer is really convinced that it's not a good idea for that particular system, and again, we're talking relatively small stuff at this point in time, then that's what we'd have to do. In addition, as far as green energy purposes, we've identified, we're planning to build the building so that it will be ready for the subsequent installation after construction is completed, the subsequent installation of solar panels. We've got opportunities to put quite a few solar panels on the roof, especially since it's a flat roof, and possibly on top of the parking deck if we decide to put some sort of a roof on the parking deck, then that would also help out quite a bit as far as solar panels are concerned. So the next steps basically is just assuming funding is authorized to complete the design, then we'd be able to, we think that the design would be completed by the late fall, perhaps early winter of this year, 2022. We will, if we were fortunate enough to get the funding for construction approved, say at a special town meeting, we estimate that it would take us about 18 months to build the project. And as far as cost estimates, the current cost estimate for the based upon the schematic design document. So again, we're still in the process of estimating the design development documents, but the schematic design documents, the estimated cost was $38,573,000. And that's the ballpark that we're looking at right now. And in conclusion, it's been a very good experience. We've got an excellent design team, an excellent OPM. Everybody's been behaving very professionally. They're all quite good at their professions. The Hingham Fire Department, Police Department have been extremely professional, knowledgeable, and reasonable. And we've got all the pieces put together to come up with a project that I think the citizens of Hingham will be very proud of. Sean, could you show some sort of overhead just showing the site with the building on it and perhaps where the location is of the deck?
1 second.
The parking deck area.
Yep. Yes, sir. So this plan's a slightly dated. It's the one I could find in short notice here, but everything on this location here, this kind of light yellow rectangle, is the upper elevation of a parking structure, a parking deck. And then this, just beyond that, everything just below there is the lower portion of the parking deck. So it's about 92 secured parking spots for both police and fire. This is the proximity of our, this is the perimeter of our building, which is the images that I had shown to you previously. This parking deck here is at the same elevation as 3A, which is at the bottom of your screen, or bottom of the screen. Everything, and then all of the parking to the right here is public parking. So looking at just kind of ingress and egress kind of topics that Bob brought in early or discussed a little bit a while ago. Public entrance along Essington here to public parking. And then we've got a rear entrance, return entrance for both police and fire along Essington here. There's a small or a slight ramp access from the lower level, which is along Essington, up to the 3A elevation to get to the parking deck for secured vehicles. And then this is a 5-bay apparatus bay that exits out onto 3A. So we're working through, the distances and the apron sizes with Mass DOT of the upcoming months. But that's a real quick lay of the land for everyone on the call.
Okay, Sean, could you just say something about the areas where both the fire and police will jointly use different areas of the building?
So combined spaces of both police and fire. So there's a combined wellness center, fitness area. The EOC, which is at this lower, their training area, EOC room, which is down here at this lower level in this upper right portion of the floor plan. But everything, as I noted a little bit earlier, everything kind of split the building in half. Really everything to the left on the upper 2 floors is fire. Everything to the right is police. And then the lower level is all police with the exception of the main lobby, which, as I noted, is entrance into the EOC training room. And then there's a small triage type room in the main lobby for the public for any instance that may be necessary.
Bob?
Okay, Paul, do you want anything to add, or are you just observing here?
I am observing. I don't have anything to add. It was a very detailed description of the history of the project and a good overview of the floor plan and the where we are now with design.
Okay, so that was Paul Callis from Hill, and I was wondering if Paul Healy might have something to say.
Just a few. Mr. Chair and members of the board, thank you for your attention tonight and to the residents of the town. I hope you appreciate the detailed explanation that Bob Garrity just provided us. Mr. Garrity has been involved in a number of other construction projects involving schools in this community. The DPW facility that was built a decade or so ago. So we're very lucky to have his services on this effort. We committed at town meeting to do this as efficiently as possible. We realize and respect the fact that we're spending taxpayer dough here. So what we've tried to do is come up with a design that reflects maximum efficiency. And I want to thank both chiefs and their deputies for really leaning into this effort. And we've literally gone room by room analyzing, what the department's needs are now, some capacity to deal with Hingham in 2050 and 2075. And they've risen to the occasion magnificently. This has been an all hands on deck effort. We've met regularly. We've had working meetings. Hingham Net Zero has been a steady companion and really stimulated the conversation on, use of energy and technology into tomorrow. And we've embraced that effort. And it's reflected in the design choices that we're making. As Bob said, 93% of this building reflects that. We're continuing to work through those other details. It's really been a great effort. You can see that the planning board input has resulted in a design modification that I think enhances the building to the street and integrates it very well into the shipyard. You know, I did have the privilege of working with both planning board members that attended this meeting while I was on the planning board. And I could see where they were going, and I thought that their suggestions were excellent. We've shrunken the building down from its original feasibility iteration. And thanks to KBA and Hill, we're coming up with a project I think the town can be proud of and fully support. It's really going to serve our public safety needs now and into the future. Bob covered this really well in great detail, I might add. But this is a project that does require, you know, steady investment of energy. And I'd like to thank Donna Smallwood, Bruce McAloney, Tally Lauder, Andy Touche, Joe Kelly, fellow committee members, each and every one of them regular attendees, and really does, you know, ladies and gentlemen of the town, your fellow citizens are working hard on this project for you. And I hope when we get to town meeting, you'll support our efforts in this regard. So I don't want to rehash anything Bob said. I think he covered it pretty well. That's kind of where we are right now.
Well, thank you. And I do want to acknowledge each member of the committee. I'm actually going to call them and just see if they have anything else they want to add. Joe Kelly.
Sorry, I had to unmute there. No, I think Paul and Bob certainly covered everything, you know, that the committee's covered and worked on this entire time. So I don't think there's anything else that I could add to what they brought here tonight. Thank you.
Tally Lauder.
I don't have anything to add. I believe Paul and Bob have both summarized the project, and I think that the committee has put in a lot of hard work and will continue to put in hard work to bring this to conclusion. Thank you.
Absolutely. Bruce McAloney.
I think Bruce may have, I know he had a meeting in town at 8 o'clock, so he might not be with us anymore.
I will move to Donna Smallwood.
Thank you for your time and attention tonight. I'm excited about this project and looking forward to gaining your support and the support of our neighbors as we go into town meeting.
Thank you. Andy Touchette. Is he here? Andy is not here.
Yeah, I don't think Andy was here.
Okay.
He had a meeting out of state.
So then I will move to our two ex officio members who have put in a lot of time and effort. I will start with our police chief, David Jones.
Evening, Joe. Thank you. I just mentioned it's been a pleasure working with the building committee and getting some input from the citizens in the town on the design. We're satisfied with the design and confident that it would solve all of our current challenges that exist in our station. Additionally, we'll be able to absorb some future growth. So it's been a pleasure working with everybody through this process.
Thank you. Our fire chief, Steve Murphy.
Thank you, Joe. And again, I echo what everyone else has said. I want to thank first off the building committee for all of their time and effort on this, and the members of both KBA and Hill International. It's been a pleasure working on this project. And like Tally said, there's still a long way to go. But, at this point in the design, the fire department is very, very happy with the product that has been presented and how it will be able to meet our needs for the current time. And, hopefully we can get as long out of this station as we have out of our other stations. That would be fantastic. Maybe not as realistic, different times and everything else, but no, we're very, very happy.
Great, thank you. And this has been a monumental task. It's continuing. I know I speak for the select board in thanking each committee member for their effort. We'd love to double your salaries, but I'm not sure 2 times 0 is really going to amount to much. But it's in all seriousness, the level of commitment that it takes to see this project through is significant, and we really publicly acknowledge each one of you. So thank you.
Thank you.
So at this point, I'm going to ask my fellow select board members for their questions and comments, starting with Liz.
Great, thank you, Joe. Well, it's obvious that a tremendous amount of work has already been completed, so thank you. I know it's been a very thoughtful process and a staged process, which I think is helpful for the community to understand, what's happening. So thank you for that. It certainly sounds like the public safety building design will meet our very urgent needs that we know of in the short term, but I appreciated hearing about the future needs as we think about the future of public safety and what that means, and as the town grows. So thank you for that, as well as all of the green energy considerations, which obviously is a goal of the town. So thank you for trying to align all of those things that are sometimes competing. I know that's again a tremendous effort. So as far as and thank you, Bob, it was a great great description and certainly very helpful for me to hear everything that's been done. In terms of the timeline, just to confirm, so we will be through the construction documents and bid process in the late fall. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and you have enough funds now to keep the OPM and KBA working on it from now till town meeting?
Sure, yep.
Okay, and then obviously we'll go into the construction phase. So yeah, no other questions right now. Thank you to the entire committee.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bill.
I just want to begin by thanking the committee. Bob, your leadership once again. This town owes you a tremendous debt of gratitude for this project, but many of the other projects you worked on in town over the years. So thank you for that. My thanks to the entire committee, to the chiefs for their work.
It's 8 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah, it's not my house, so I'm not sure where that's coming from, but so thank you for all of that. I think one of the reasons why I want to point out one of the reasons why this committee has been so successful is because of the collaborative effort that we've heard about tonight. Bringing the planning board on board early in the process was key to where they are right now, and I appreciate you doing that. I think having Hingham Net Zero attend your meetings and addressing their concerns proactively was excellent, and I appreciate the committee being so responsive and designing the building in an environmentally friendly manner. I appreciate the committee's responsiveness to those concerns, and I appreciate HNZ raising those concerns. So, just the building that we see tonight is a much better designed building because of that. So, a true collaborative effort at this point, and I know the committee, we still have miles to go here before we get over the finish line, but just a lot of great work has been done, and I really appreciate all that's been done so far. I do have one question. Having done some office relocation work, legal work in my career as a union side attorney, one of the things I've heard from my good friend Chief Dave Jones is when the police department moved into their current location, they outgrew that space the day they moved in. So when I'm hearing that this current design does accommodate for future growth, and I think that is always a key, that when buildings are built, you have to accommodate for future growth. And, you know, we are currently talking about how policing is changing, and, you know, there's going to be changes in policing, and there'll be changes in firefighting going forward. Those professions will be changing. Can maybe either Bob or KBA tell me how this building will accommodate for future growth in those professions?
Yeah, I can pick up on that. So as the Chief Jones noted, you know, there's a few additional, I want to say office spaces, but, you know, there's, you know, work spaces, work zones within the kind of a collaborative work zone area where there's a potential of some expansion within their side. On the fire side, I don't want to speak all for Chief Murphy, but there's some expansion opportunities within the administration area, like, again, kind of that open work area, work zone area for additional administration in that location. Related to the apparatus bay, I'll let Chief Murphy speak to that a little bit more, but we've kind of got a little bit of growth or future growth within there for some future equipment that is hopefully coming in the near future. But again, you know, for larger vehicles, larger apparatus within the apparatus bay, along with, you know, a small training area within the apparatus bay for kind of an extension of where they're training now. Also, future growth within the locker rooms. What we have is don't have the exact count to memory quite right yet, but there is a potential of expansion on the police locker room side, depending on whether there's a larger female force or male force, depending on which direction it goes, that we were able to divide equally if there's more male growth or female growth, depending on that in the near future. And I believe we've extended our locker room growth, not locker room growth, but locker rooms, you know, to at least to expand us for the next 10 to 15 years already. So, you know, those are the kind of areas where, you know, where we always focus on future growth within the footprint of the building.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I want to pick up on Bill's question. There was talk early on in this project about planning or doing some parts of the project in a modular basis, so that if we wanted to do something now, maybe we build, you know, 3 rooms with the potential to build an extra room, or build a larger room with the potential to divide. So to what extent is there modular planning for this, which could be used either for future unanticipated growth or consistent with the model of, for example, adding solar panels at a particular time in the future? Has the modular approach been implemented for this project?
The modular approach with the program, yes, there's limited opportunity to kind of subdivide some of those open workspaces that I was talking about.
Yep.
But looking at the your discussion about the solar array,
yep.
You know, that's the future growth that we always make it solar ready, if you will. So the structure will be designed for solar array, not only for the building itself, but also the parking structure. So right. If in fact, so that's a little bit modular, I guess you could say, but if in fact the town or the district ends up going in that direction, everything's pre-planned for, conduits, the structure's there. And then, you know, whatever amount that the community is willing to accept, or not willing to accept, but willing to pursue, you know, we've provided those provisions enough to allow that.
You mentioned solar panels. It's been discussed by others. Is a flat roof preferable to a gable roof for purposes of installing solar panels?
It's the attachment method, you know, so it really depends on, you know, but the solar angle, if you will, the optimal soil angle, can be achieved in either approach.
Okay.
The I don't want to call it a detriment because that's an incorrect term, but by going to a flat roof option, we've are now exposing mechanical units out onto the flat roof. So theoretically, we were kind of losing a little bit of square footage that way. But we still have square footage to allow for solar panels to be installed on these flat roofs facing south. And then again, the carport, parking structure.
The parking structure, sure.
Yep.
Staying on the roofs, so I think that the change to a flat roof was relatively recent. How does that affect massing of snow, the snow load? And is that something that you've looked at in terms of making the assessment to go with a flat roof?
Correct. So that was what Bob mentioned in the last 2 to 3 weeks is what we had to redesign. We went through our structural engineer, went from the steel loading and the dead loading, live loading capacities for a gabled roof to the flat roof. So that was the really quick turnaround we just did to get it into this pricing set. So yes, all of that has been calculated in for the snow loading but the snow loading calculations. And then, the roof, how the roof drains, roof sloping, tapered insulation, all that's been considered, overflow drains, it really turns into we're quite familiar with these types of structures. So whether it's gabled roof or flat roofs, it's kind of, you're able to pull from other experiences pretty quickly. But that's all been captured in this current pricing exercise.
Great. Question, I think it might be for Paul Healy. To what extent is the committee satisfied with the cost controls that are in place as the project has proceeded and as you expect it to proceed?
To answer the question quickly, I would say that Bob Garrity's got a pretty sharp pencil and I'm enjoying it. And Donna Smallwood's right beside him. So I'm feeling pretty comfortable about that, Joe.
Okay, great.
Yep.
I'll ask a question that I think I know the answer. I just want to make sure. It's been in the I know it was in the Globe and other papers that we're seeing significantly more sea rise than perhaps many people were expecting. My understanding is that the siting of this facility is safe from the risks of sea rise. Is that correct?
Yes, sorry, that is correct.
Yeah.
I forget the exact elevations, but this area is above the 100-year floodplain.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that is one of the things that we looked at, I know, before making the purchase decision. So just wanted to confirm that.
Yep.
And then finally, one aspect of this project that has yet to be discussed this evening is how instrumental it is for the senior center, because we really need to get the cops out of the building. So there's more room to expand the senior center. And so there's an added incentive to make sure that this runs smoothly so that the second phase of this for our seniors can be implemented. So again, thank you to the committee and thank you to all who have participated. I will now open this up to questions or comments from members of the public. Please raise your hand if anyone has a comment or question. John Borger, if you could just give us your address, please, and ask your question.
Yes, John Borger, 53 Lafayette Avenue. Mr. Fisher, I don't really have a question. We have been Hingham Net Zero has been the primary civic organization participating with the committee. And so I'm wondering if there's some value to you this evening, right now, to hear a kind of a scorecard, the way that we see the project. We intend to provide written input into this process to both you and the advisory committee. It's mostly positive. So I know I'm sensitive to the fact that you have a full agenda this evening. And I'd like to take up.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I think that would be helpful. If you can give us Not necessarily the abridged version, but the shortened version would be great.
Okay, that would be,
Yes.
you would hear that right now.
Yes.
Okay, great. Bob Garrity's been a gracious, wonderful host. Thank you. Tried to be very responsive. Kudos to the whole effort. I think that it's exciting that our first responders are going to have a first-rate facility, and it looks like an excellent job has been done capturing the requirements and addressing them. We're very aware of the fact that this has been a long slog for the committee, 5+ years and counting, and they've spent hundreds of hours, and we thank them for their service to the community. Let me give you a kind of, if I can, an expedited scorecard. There are 3 positives we want to celebrate. The first, as Bob Garrity mentioned, was the selection of air source heat pumps as the primary building system for heating and cooling. This is huge. This makes this a near net zero building, just that choice. So that's a great development. Second thing is the solar panels on the roof and elsewhere potentially. Our understanding is that it was planned to have a minimum of 48. We heard at one point that a flat roof might make that double the 48. And now recently, I think KBA has kind of dialed that back as they realize they're citing mechanicals on the roof. So we're very interested in seeing where we end up, but it's great that we have solar on the roof, both substantively and also, frankly, symbolically. The third thing is the charging stations for the electric fleet that we know will be coming. They didn't say much about that, but we understand that charging stations will be included, as well as provision for wiring addition stations. So that's great. There are 3 areas of concern where we continue to seek a dialogue with the committee. The first is the seasonal heating of the concrete slabs in the 5 apparatus bays. These and the 3 things I'm going to mention all require the use of natural gas as the favored design direction for BER, who is the mechanical systems consultant for the project. So one, the heating of the concrete slabs seasonally, that's about maybe 5 months in the year. Secondly, the use of natural gas in what they're describing as a rapid recovery heating system for when the bay doors have to be open. They need to heat the area quickly when the doors close. And they're going to use natural gas for that. And also related to those 2 items, since they're putting in a boiler, or 2 actually fairly large gas-fired condensing boilers, they're going to be using natural gas to heat the hot water for the entire building. We have been exchanging correspondence, and we've had some suggestions, but this is where we've ended up. We've asked ourselves at this point, we're not happy about a natural gas hookup, and I think there are going to be people in the town who are going to be looking askance at that. So we thought real hard about, well, what is our position on this project? Do these things rise to the level where we would feel we'd have to oppose the project? And our conclusion is no. And we've reached that conclusion basically by referencing 2 sets of principles. First are what have become known as the Berkeley Exemptions, which essentially say, common sense wise, if you've got a function like a hospital that needs to sterilize equipment, and they say they can only do that with natural gas, allow the natural gas application, but only that application, with the idea that you'll retrofit as soon as possible. The second set of principles that we've tried to pay attention to are essentially reasonableness and materiality. And reasonable, these are 2 principles that we think the average Hingham voter will resonate to. Our calculations indicate that for the natural gas part of the system, that is going to be responsible for probably a maximum of about 9% of the BTUs expended in this building. You know, that's not de minimis, but it's not intolerable. And given the fact that this is a life or death mission critical building, I think BER and the committee feel it's better to be a little conservative and go with technology that they have more confidence in, and that's the natural gas technology. So in general, we feel at this point that it is definitely within the town's best interest to proceed with this project as it's currently designed. We look forward to continued dialogue, if only to understand better BER's reasoning, because we've exchanged quite a bit of technical information with them. And we need to do our own version of due diligence because we've got some passionate people in our organization, as well as within the town. And I think we're all better served if we have a thorough airing of these issues and come to a common understanding of what the real needs and the best solution is. I would point out just one thing by way of kind of a heads up. The Department of Energy and Resources on February 8th unveiled their latest iteration of the so-called stretch codes. And it's very complicated and time doesn't allow me to go into it tonight. But essentially, we would urge that the committee look very carefully at those codes and some of the conditions. Along the lines of what I alluded to before is reasonableness. The DOER is not prohibiting the use of fossil fuels in new buildings, okay? They recognize the technology and the building industry is not there yet. So we have to all be reasonable and patient. We'll get there. But what they do say is that if you're going to have, and this is along the lines of the Berkeley exemptions, if you're going to have natural gas, any fossil fuel application in the building, you are well advised to ensure that you are designing in a technically easy and economical pathway to eventual retrofit, which we think is probably in the future. I mean, if you think about this building as a 50-year building, heat pumps have made enormous strides in the last 10 or 15 years. I'm sitting in my room here, my office upstairs. My house is heated with heat pumps. I don't even have the air exchanger on. They're tested down to minus 13. That progress will continue. So we would urge that the committee work with KBA to ensure that they are including a economical pathway to retrofit. And I think with that, we be happy with the outcome. We're delighted with the quality of the work that's been done for our first responders. And we're comfortable standing up and attesting to this. And I think since, if you remember back to the last town meeting, there was quite a bit of discussion about whether or not to force the committee to stipulate that this will be a net zero building. And most of us didn't even know what that meant at the time. And I think that reasonably, town meeting took a vote on the motion from the floor and said, no, that's not reasonable. We're not going to do that. And you said, participate in the open meeting process, advocate for what you think this building ought to be. And we've done that. So I think we have some street cred and some value in being able to so testify to our membership as well as to the Hingham voters that this process, we've gone through this process with a committee and we have a lot of documentation. We think this is a reasonable outcome. 9% certainly is a reasonable threshold for materiality. It does not trip any kind of reasonable standard where people should feel like we've compromised unnecessarily on this. So we appreciate the opportunity to participate and but also to have continued dialogue with the committee. Thanks.
John, thank you. And really, thanks for taking up the invitation and participating in the process.
Our pleasure.
And the way you speak in terms of looking for a path forward, recognizing that there's the possibility of transition and in many ways, it's transitioned to a technology we may not have yet.
Right.
So your input is extremely valuable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public? Seeing none, I am prepared to take a motion on Article R.
I'll make a motion to recommend favorable action of Article R.
Second.
Roll call vote. Liz,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and Joe. Aye on R. Thank you. And Bob, do you want to adjourn your committee, or do you want to just continue as we move on to the next project?
I'd be delighted to adjourn our committee.
Okay.
Do I have a motion to adjourn our committee?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion, all in favor, say aye. Let me read your names. Paul Healy,
Paul Healy, aye.
Joe Kelly,
Joe Kelly, aye.
Tally,
Ally Lauder, aye.
Donna,
Donna Smallwood, aye.
and Bob Garrity. Aye, the ayes have it. Thank you very much. We
Thank
are
you.
adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Buddy,
Thanks.
Night.
appreciate it.
Next on our agenda is Article CC, which is to transfer care, custody, and control of a portion of the transfer station site to HMLP. And Tom, I'm going to hand it over to you and then have you introduce the folks from HMLP who are going to be speaking this evening.
Sure, yeah, me or?
Yes, Tom.
You mean, yeah. So we have Tom.
I know there's
Morahan.
another Tom,
Yeah,
sorry.
I wasn't sure if you meant
I
Tom
missed
Morahan.
that one. Okay.
That's right. So we have Tom Morahan here is the general manager over at HMLP, as well as his whole team. I know Deirdre Lawrence, their attorney, is with them, and I believe some board members and others. So I will let Tom do his thing.
Before you do, Laura, do you have, I see Laura Burns is here. Do you have a quorum for your committee? Just make sure.
Is 50% a quorum? I
No.
don't think so.
No. Oh, okay. I couldn't see the whole screen here. Okay, good. So Tom, the other Tom, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, Joe. Thank you for hearing us tonight, and thank you to the other board members. We do have a presentation to give. Joe Kilschmier is our one of our team members. He's going to actually run the presentation. So if we can give him access.
Here we go. Take it away, Tom.
All right. So again, the presentations is about what we've called the Hingham Electrical Infrastructure Reliability Project. So our objectives tonight to give you an overview of the project, explain why we need this 115 kV line, discuss how the project was selected, how the substation site was selected at the transfer station, talk about what we see as the next steps, answer whatever questions the board might have, and obtain the select board's recommendation to move forward, and I guess also to sign the memorandum of agreement that Tom Coughlin has put together. So tonight we have with us our LIG consultants. Tom Converse is the principal. He's with us tonight. He's our engineer and design consultant. Ty and Bond, Tracy Adamski is and Ty and Bond is the environmental and permitting consultant. Cape Power Systems is Charlie Solomoni. Charlie couldn't be with us tonight, but he's our ISO New England advisor. Then we have Rob Shapiro and Deirdre Lawrence from Duncan and Allen for our legal and regulatory. and then Joe Kilschmer for our communications. We also have Steve Girardi, our engineer, and Mark Fahey, the assistant general manager, on tonight, as well as Laura Burns, our board member. So again, the purpose is to construct a new line. It's about 3.7 miles, starting in Weymouth, coming underground into Hingham, down French Street to Hobart, and into a new station. The town is currently served by 2 lines, transmission lines. They're on a single set of towers. The double circuit tower configuration is susceptible to contingencies. So if we lose one of those or if we lose one of those towers, the entire town would be out. And we have seen, the October storm we had, much longer outages during that storm. Not that they were transmission related, but we did see transmission outages along those lines in the Eversource lines. So fortunately, we didn't have the 2 lines come out, but we did see some outages on those lines. And again, those lines can be out for a number of reasons, for maintenance for periods of time during the year, leaving Hingham on the 1 line. So the new underground line would interconnect the Eversource system in Weymouth, terminate at the new substation at the transfer station. In essence, it'd be an independent line, a brand new feed to Hingham. It could support the entire town on that 1 line if need be. And it also extends, or it also helps us support our climate action plan. So we as we talked about tonight, the new public safety building being all electric, we're looking to the future, and electrification is one of the major goals. So we expect the construction to begin sometime probably late 24 to 25, and be in operation sometime in probably 26. So the existing line comes from a National Grid substation. It's located, if you're familiar with the parking lot in Weymouth for the train stations, it's right down behind some buildings there. Comes out of that station, goes down the Greenbush right away to Fresh River, to French, and then up Hobart into Hobart Station, the existing station. So I'm going to turn it over to Tom Converse, and he's going to talk about the project need.
Good evening, and thank you for letting us put this presentation on. We want to stress this is a reliability project. It has some capacity benefits we'll talk about in a few minutes, but the project need is really to assess the system vulnerabilities. And you can see that brown structure in the picture. That's the typical structure running along the railroad tracks, and similar structures coming on that route that Tom pointed out that comes to Hobart. They double circuit towers, 1 circuit on the right, 1 on the left. So you can see a tower failure could result in an extended outage because both circuits would be out. And for context, there's about 40 sets of towers, 30 sets between Hingham, where the East Weymouth, where we take our tap back towards the supply of Eversource that National Grid owns, and 23 of those are on both sides of the track, and 7 of them are monopoles like this. And there's 15 more that Hingham owns. So we have a lot of vulnerability, and hopefully this project helps against that. Some past severe weather events have resulted in damage to portions of this line. The storm, as Tom said, the October storm outage in Hingham kind of underscores it, and you've seen the headlines around the country. So we'll go to the next. Thank you. During maintenance on either of these lines, you can see, there'd be only 1 feed to the town. And again, anything happens, a worker's up there on maintenance, they take the other circuit out, you're down. So people have asked us, well, what's wrong with it? It was built that way. Well, reliabilities have changed a lot in the years since it was built. The big blackout, and then in 2013, NERC, FERC, and ISO New England upgraded the reliability standards to make this a contingency that they address in reliability designs. So we're following that design. As I mentioned, it's a reliability project, and I want to drive that home. It's to keep the lights on, but there is capacity benefits. The design of Hobart right now is 80 megawatts. There's 3 transformers, any 2 can carry it. And consistent with the town, plans and climate action, we expect it to grow, and we don't know, but it could exceed the 80. The design is allowing for another transformer in the station, so it could have capacity benefits if and when the time needs. Next. As Tom mentioned, it's an underground transmission line in Weymouth. It starts somewhere near the skating rink, I guess, and then it comes along. We'll talk about routes we're still in. We know the endpoints. It starts in Weymouth along the right of way for Eversource and ends at Hobart Street. Our route we're looking at is about 3.7, but Tracy will talk to the route selection and the myriad of them. It's not locked in until we get approval of a route. It'll be a new Eversource owned tap station under the right of way near the skating rink. It'll connect to our line, and our line will go to the transfer station, where a new substation and a building will be built in some area for a transformer and switchgear. It will be an indoor substation. It'll be an enclosed building, minimal environmental impacts. Next. Inside the substation, we'll have circuit breakers, bus work, and protection and communications equipment. And as I mentioned a couple times, the capacity ability of having a transformer installed when the load growth warrants it down the road. We're estimating the project at 55 to 60 million. We continue to refine those numbers. As anyone knows who's bought bread or gasoline, numbers keep going crazy, but we are refining the numbers. We keep reaching out. We've got some consultants that are helping us really look at these numbers in detail, and we'll continue to update these as go. And obviously we're looking to spend as little as possible to the extent possible. Next. I'll turn it over to Tracy for the site selection.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you everyone for the opportunity to present today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our site and route selection. So we start with a set of goals, and we look at a range of sites and route alternatives and identify certain criteria that we can apply uniformly to then be able to assess the different sites and the routes against each other, with the goals of minimizing construction environmental costs, minimizing overall system costs, and meeting the needs of the project, which is to ensure that Hingham has a reliable electric system. And we also look at community benefits and environmental justice objectives of the regulators. So the substation site selection is completed. We started the process in earnest in 2018. And prior to that, we did initial review of potential site areas, including North Hingham near the shipyard, South Hingham, which would have been a national grid interconnection, and the 308 Cushing Street, which was the former HMLP facility. Those 3 areas were ruled out primarily due to the extensive costs for upgrading the systems to be able to tie those systems back into the HMLP system. For South Hingham, extensive upgrades would have been required to the national grid system even before Hingham would be constructing its own infrastructure. So that would have added close to $18 million onto that project. For 308 Cushing Street, there was an additional 7 miles of transmission line that would have been required for that project, again, increasing the cost substantially. So the preferred location for the substation was near the existing Hobart substation, which is our preferred site area. So once we decided that that's where we wanted to land, somewhere near the existing Hobart substation, we looked at a number of properties. And you may remember last year we came looking at a specific triangle parcel. after, we received a fair amount of community feedback and went back to the drawing board to look at other sites and relook at some of the sites, including the transfer station. So looking back at the transfer station, we found a piece of the transfer station that isn't currently being used by the transfer station and has space for what we're looking to build. And so that is our preferred site. And what we're here today to talk to you about the transfer of that site, the HMLP, for moving this project forward. With respect to the route selection, that's still ongoing. We are working with Weymouth and conducting community outreach, as well as coordinating with Eversource, who will be the ultimate entity that constructs and owns that tap site in Weymouth. So the proposed substation site is over here in the northeastern corner of the transfer station. So going to the next slide. This shows a little bit, I guess, more of what the layout would look like. The just realized I don't have my mouse. So the gray area on the north, thank you, Joe, right there. That is the that would be the substation building, and then next to it would be the transformer. Yeah, moving south, and then the switchgear south of that. That whole area is what we're looking for transfer to HMLP. It was cited there. We also looked at wetland resource areas. That's the lines that are kind of like the amoeba shapes to the north of the substation area. So we looked at resource areas and are locating this outside of the 50-foot buffer zone, which was a concern of the Conservation Commission. And you can see where the existing Hobart Station substation is. So it's in close proximity to this new substation, and we are outside of the overall active area of the transfer station. Thanks, Joe. And so this is just a general rendering of what those facilities would look like. And so some key milestones, we held a number of community meetings in Hingham to discuss this site in October and November. We're here to get the transfer, custody, and control of the property at town meeting this spring. We will be continuing dialogue throughout the project with Hingham residents and businesses, as well as continuing our outreach in Weymouth. We're looking to start the local and state permitting process in earnest later this year. And as Tom had noted, construction and testing and operation would occur between 2024 and 2026 after we receive our approvals. And there's a number of approvals that are required for this. So we would be submitting an application to the Energy Facility Siting Board for their review, as well as the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act and local boards, including Zoning and Conservation Commission. So there's a number of opportunities for review of this project, as well as for continued public input on the project as it moves forward with the permitting process. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rob.
Thank you, Tracy. Thanks to members of the select board and everybody who's joining us tonight on the Zoom meeting. We appreciate the opportunity to talk about this project. I'm going to speak very briefly about the Energy Facility Siting Board review. Typically, I go into a longer presentation about this, but I want to recognize it's been a long night for everybody. So I'll just briefly point out the Siting Board's a 9-member state agency, and the board is charged with the responsibility of providing reliable energy supply for the Commonwealth with a minimum impact on the environment and at the lowest possible cost. HMLP's proposed 115 kV underground transmission line and substation clearly requires Siting Board approval. Importantly, No other state approval or permit can be issued until the siting board approves an applicant's petition to construct. It's really, I want to underscore that the siting board permit, the siting board approval, it's not a boilerplate permit, and it's not a cursory review. This is a comprehensive evidence-based process. It's an evidentiary process. It takes 18 months to 2 years, and the siting board's decisions are not lightly made. They're made based on evidence and documentation. There's an opportunity for interested parties to intervene and present their own evidence. A public hearing will be held in either Hingham or Weymouth or both. There will be an opportunity for public comment. And as I said, it's a long process and one that really leaves no stone unturned. The issues the siting board will address are listed on the slide. They look at project need. In our case, it's, as Tom pointed out, this is a reliability need with a capacity benefit. And once need is established, if need is established, the siting board doesn't stop there. They look at alternatives. They want to make sure that the applicant's proposal is the best way to meet that need. Is it the least cost way to meet that need? Is it the lowest environmental impact way to meet that need? They also look at project cost. And as far as routes are concerned, we'll have to, HMLP will have to present a preferred route and a noticed alternative route. And the siting board looks very closely at a wide range of environmental and construction impacts. They look at noise, traffic, air, wetlands, water resources, stormwater, visual impacts by requiring the applicant to show what the substation will look like from multiple vantage points and how it will impact neighborhoods. They look at historical, archaeological, and other impacts. They'll look at magnetic fields. They'll look at land use. They'll look at safety. And they'll look at issues associated with hazard and solid waste. Importantly, the siting board always tailors its review to the community that's affected. Every community is different. Every municipality is different. And the board understands that. And they will look at the environmental and construction impacts through that unique community-based lens. Thank you.
So we do have a website for the project, dedicated just to the project, where people can go and look, get information, leave questions, ask questions, and we monitor the website. We try to get back to people in a short time. So that is available, and it's been up and running. So at this point, we'd open it up to questions to the board.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation. Bill, I'm going to start with you if I can.
Great, thank you. Tom, thank you for the presentation, and my thanks to your team as well. Can you go back to the slide of where exactly it's going to be in the landfill?
Sure.
I'm sorry, transfer station.
Yeah. Okay. This is probably the best view of it. So it's you can see where the containers are on the exit of the transfer station there. And as you're going out, there's a kind of a hill that goes up there coming out of the transfer station. It would be right in that hill. So we would be, leveling out the hill, building a retaining wall behind it. And
is that the bulk area, bulk waste area disposal?
I think they have containers at the top there, some containers.
Okay, so it's like in the bays for regular. I'm trying to envision where it actually is. Is that where?
Yeah, so those lines are where the trail is back in.
Yeah,
you
okay.
can go up and around and come down that hill beside the containers.
And you would be up on the hill. So you would be up on the hill above above where the trail is back in.
Well, we would be, we'd be taking out part of that hill, and we would be building a retaining wall behind it. So it would be kind of built into the hill.
Okay. All right. Got it. And and maybe Tracy can answer this one. Tracy, can you go over the areas in and around the Hobart Street area that you looked at and ruled out?
Sure. We looked at approximately 10 sites. There were a number of them in the vicinity here. both, I'll say, to the north and to the west of the transfer station. So we looked at all municipal owned well, I'll say we looked at primarily municipal owned properties. There was a few other properties that we then kind of did a little bit of due diligence on to see if they were adequate for, if they had adequate space essentially to put a new substation on. And the majority of the sites had some significant constraints, such as, well, primarily wetlands. So there were wetlands or wetlands buffer zones. And early on, we had met with the Conservation Commission to get a sense of what was allowed within buffer areas. And there's a pretty strict no-touch 50-foot buffer zone that the Conservation Commission holds. So that ruled out a number of properties that we looked at. This actually on this plan, you can see the triangular piece that we had initially come forth with last year over to, it's on the far west there. Yes, thanks, Joe. And you know, that one again had adequate space that was outside of resource areas and buffer zones. So you know, when there was a lot of community feedback regarding that parcel, that's when we looked back again at the transfer station to see if there was additional space available, and found that property, that piece there, that had suitable area for what we were looking to build.
Okay. And Attorney Shapiro, you said that the permitting process to get to the siting board takes, did I hear you right, about a year, 2 years?
At this point, it's 18 months to 2 years from beginning to end. They have a pretty heavy caseload. As you probably realize, a lot of projects are being built around the state, addressing reliability issues like this one. So there's a queue, and but it's an 18 to 24 month process.
Got it. All right. I think Attorney Coughlin's still online. We're gonna have, we have a reverter clause in the article language, correct? Where we're going to, we could pull back the land in the event the permitting isn't approved. Is that right, John?
That's correct, Bill. There's two pieces. The warrant article would be a town meeting vote authorizing but not requiring the select board to transfer care, custody, and control. So you choose when you actually do the transfer. And then the MOU has reverter language in it that if the site's not used for this purpose, then it would revert back to the town.
Okay, great. All right, those are all the questions I have right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Liz.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom and team. That was a great and thorough presentation. And I appreciate that you're addressing the vulnerabilities and redundancy. I think that that's critical for us as we move forward. I'm just trying to understand some of the dependencies here. I know somebody mentioned the route approval. Is that done during that siting board review?
Yes, that's correct. The siting board has to approve the route.
Okay.
It has to meet siting board standards in terms of environmental impacts and construction impacts.
Okay, great.
Siting board, and importantly, the siting board often will impose conditions. They'll approve a route, but they'll impose conditions to ensure that the construction proceeds in a environmentally sensitive manner in terms of when construction can take place, hours of construction, night, date, weekdays versus weekends, etc.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And it sounds like there's a lot of players here and dependencies with certainly Weymouth's involvement, National Grid, Eversource. Can you just talk a little bit about that and how you manage that?
I think that for this particular project, we would be in two municipalities. The Eversource piece would be in Weymouth. Much of the line would be in Weymouth, and the termination of the line would be in Hingham, along with the new substation. And the siting board would look at both pieces. Their primary thing is the route, but they also look at the substation. They'll look at site selection for both. And just the way we went through an outreach process in Hingham before coming to our choice and selection with respect to the substation site. As Tracy pointed out, we are going through a outreach process with Weymouth as well. And they will look at all these things. They'll also look at, not to get too technical, but the Eversource tap station, something that's called an ancillary facility. They'll look at that as well and make sure that that fits in with the overall project in terms of cost and environmental impacts.
Okay, great.
But the short answer, it's one process. We're not going in under separate petitions.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you.
If I can follow up, just so I understand the way this is working. As I understand, am I correct? You need I guess, a right of way or right of access through Weymouth for this project to work?
We would get, again, the siting board would give us the right to put it in Weymouth. They would look at the routes that are proposed.
Yep.
And then they would make a decision as to which route is most appropriate. We are working with Weymouth, on the different routes that we've proposed to date. And, we've got some input from them on those different routes.
So the siting board determines which route is appropriate, but do they have the authority to grant you access, or do you need to get that from Weymouth?
I'd leave that to Rob and Deirdre to answer.
The way it typically works, you get your siting board approval. As I mentioned, you can't get any other state permits until you have your siting board approval. Right. Then you begin to work on the local level, depending on the rules of the town. Sometimes, remember, this would be in public ways, and we're not seeking private property for purposes of this. But the bottom line is, though, if there is a difficulty with a particular municipality, the siting board ultimately has made they give you an opportunity to work with the municipality in terms of getting the right to the public way. But if you're not able to get that, you can go back to the siting board for another process. But hopefully our goal would be to work with Weymouth to get what we need in terms of public access.
Yeah, going the friendly route is always preferable.
Absolutely.
But I didn't understand that the siting board actually had superseding authority, that they could grant you that right of way if Weymouth for some reason does not want to do it. Is that
they have they have something called a certificate power, sometimes called an override. It's technically called a certificate. You're able to go back to the site if the siting board approves a project, and then you make your best efforts to try to get your local permits, and those local permits are denied or unduly delayed. You can go back to the siting board for a superseding composite permit.
Got it. Okay. And in addition to permits, are there contracts that are needed? For example, does Eversource have to agree to do the hookup? Or if there's other utilities or other players, are there contractual requirements that they have to participate, or do you have to negotiate each one of those contracts separately?
We have to negotiate individually. We have already negotiated with Eversource, and we have executed I believe a design and engineering agreement. We're continuing to work with them. We are very much partners with Eversource on this project.
When the project goes forward, it sounds like there's going to be work done at the Eversource site and then work done in Hingham. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And so the work at the Eversource site, is that going to be funded by HMLP?
Tom?
That will be funded by HMLP. So the Eversource will build a tap station so we can tap onto the transmission lines in Weymouth. They will own and operate that tap station. We'll bring our cable into that tap station and have a breaker in there.
Right.
But Eversource will own and operate that station. That station will be paid for through their rates, which will be basically a monthly payment to Eversource over the life of that, what they see as the life of that asset, which is typically for a transmission asset is probably 40 years.
That was my next question. What you saw as the expected life of this project, not how long it'll take, but how long it'll last.
Yeah.
Typically, it's
Typically
around,
for a transmission asset, it's 40 years.
okay. I think I've covered all my questions. I will now ask if there's anyone else with HMLP. I see Laura Burns is here. If there's anyone else from HMLP who wants to comment on the project before I open it up to the public.
Laura Burns, 479 Main Street for HMLP. I think that our team has done a really great job giving you the whole picture, and I don't have anything to add.
Right. I share your view. I think they've done a superb job. Are there members of the public? If we can stop the screen sharing, it'll make it easier for me to see if other residents are interested in asking questions. Thank you. So I see Kelly, and I'm not sure I'm going to pronounce your last name correctly. Kelly?
That's correct.
Okay, just give your name and address and then your question. Thank you.
Bob Achille, 194 Old Hobart Street. I just have a few questions and comments, I guess, for maybe Tom. If you're not aware, I've been dealing with noise issues with the town for upwards of 8 years now at my current location. It's at a critical boiling point now with stuff that's been going on lately regarding work before hours, after hours, at the current substation, the landfill, and et cetera. My question is, and I'm gonna put you on the hot seat right now because Mr. Henry wouldn't answer it last time. Who is responsible for the noise of the trucks coming in and out before and after hours at the new facility?
So let me make sure. So is this a question for HMLP or is this?
Yes, yes, but yeah, Tom Morahan, that's fine. Yep. Because Mr. Henry, he wouldn't answer the question last time. He skirted it and skirted it and skirted it. So,
So just so I'm clear, so who's responsible when we go into the substation after hours?
Correct. For the noise that's going to come from there. And the town's very aware. Town administrator, the selectmen are very aware of what's going on with my situation. It's been going on since 2015. I've been very patient. I've been, it's like they've been kicking the can down the road for, I don't know, 8 years now. And it's come to a critical boiling point now. They're well aware of what I'm talking about. We won't get into that. Is Hingham Light going to be responsible for the trucks idling over there, the doors slam and shut at 2 in the morning when they're doing work on it, the external radios that transmit through the neighborhood? Who's going to be responsible?
And we're going to be responsible for it. We will talk to the guys. We've talked to the guys, asked them not to.
We've talked to them for 8 years now, and it doesn't matter. They say, and you know what? It stays good for 2 or 3 months, and then it goes right back to the BS again. Okay, so
Bob,
it's at a pretty bad point right now.
Okay, so
if I could just make, and you'll probably make the same point I'm going to make, but
go ahead, Dan.
I think the town has been contacted by Mr. Achilles' attorney with some of these complaints, and we're attempting to set up a meeting on that specifically directly with him and his attorney. So at this point, because there's been a claim filed against the town, there's been a threat of litigation, I would recommend that those discussions be held not at this meeting, but at a meeting with this attorney.
Well, I think,
Bob, let me just add that I just want to make sure that we're getting questions on the substation project. And
here we are.
Okay, so if you can limit your questions to that, that'd be great.
Well, that was one of my questions, who is responsible for, and I think the public has a right to know.
So if I will
situation that's been going on back here behind closed doors, where 1 or 2 houses in the neighborhood, nobody else in town knows what's going on. It's a huge issue. It's a huge issue. And it's been ignored for 8 years now. And that's my question. My question is, who's responsible? This is a legit question, for the noise of the trucks over there. And you can't tell me it's not going to happen, because it's going to happen.
So, I mean, what I've heard and my understanding is that if you're talking about activity of HMLP, they are responsible.
Okay, perfect. That's all I needed to hear.
Okay.
And I get, just another question or comment, I guess. I've been in contact with, the town of Weymouth, the mayor's office over there on the project as well. They've been kept me abreast every time there's been meetings and stuff over there. and I know there's gonna be a laundry list of demands that they're gonna want for their community, and rightfully so. Do you have a list of what they're gonna demand and what it's gonna cost the town of Hingham, the ratepayers, the taxpayers, to upgrade or take care of their parks, their facilities, their sidewalks that they're gonna want for you to go through their community?
We've looked at, we have an understanding that Weymouth is going to be looking for, some things that to be repaired related to, or, improved related to the work that we're doing. We understand that we're carrying that cost in our estimates.
Do you have a list of what they're, I mean, I can get it from them, but I mean, it just sees if do you have anything, have they put anything in writing yet of what they want? I know they had mentioned a few parks they want redone, a few parks built, sidewalks and so forth like that. Is there anything more to it than that?
We don't have anything from Weymouth this time to say what they're looking for. I know they have a group that was going to get together. They talked about at the last meeting.
Okay.
But we have not talked to them about, anything that they were going to be looking for as far as this project goes.
Okay, thank you.
I see Stephen or Girardi.
Good afternoon. My name is Steve. I'm the engineer at Hingham Light. To actually answer Bob's question, currently HMLP is looking at a remote SCADA for the current Hobart substation, which will be implemented into the new station. Because honestly, nobody likes to go there at 2 a.m. to close in a breaker if we have an outage. So to increase the reliability of our system, something that's been on the wish list for a long time is put a remote SCADA so we do not have to go there in the middle of the night unless we have to do transmission switching, which doesn't happen very often. But Bob is right. If we have a storm, we do go down there because we have to manually open and close breakers and put protection on for the linemen. So yes, we have been looking at it, and currently I am going to be seeking RFPs for remote SCADA system so we can operate it from the 31 Bear Cove Park. Hopefully that helps answer the question a little.
It does, but again, I think we're far afield from what the specific warrant article is addressing. So if we can have a question specifically to the project, that would be helpful. Anyone else? So again, we are looking at Article CC. Concerning a parcel where they're looking to have to grant the select board the authority to transfer care, custody, control over to HMLP. Any further questions? Seeing none, I am prepared to accept the motion.
Make a motion to recommend favorable action of Article CC.
Second.
Roll call vote. Liz.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
And Joe. Aye. Approved. Thank you. So I believe we have now covered all of the 2022 Annual Town Meeting Warrant article topics that were scheduled for this evening. And we've covered the opening the warrant for additional articles. Next item on our agenda is to consider the request of private bonds for the London Ponds Inc. project in accordance with section 147F of the Internal Revenue Code. And I would call on Art Robert to lead us in that discussion.
Joe, just a point of order.
Yes, sir.
Do we have to take up a memorandum of agreement as well?
I don't believe we do.
Go look at if you go look at the vote list.
I better look at the vote list. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Liz, do you see that as well?
I do, yeah.
John, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, didn't we have that as a agenda? I thought I had sent in a draft vote on that. But
I just see it as an item we might need to take up. I don't know.
Do we have it on the vote list? Let me see.
It is on the vote list. It's on the top of page 2.
Oh, there it is. Yes, I am sorry. To to consider on the HMLP memorandum of agreement. So I will accept a, well, let me, before we go there, Liz or Bill, do you have any questions on the proposed memorandum of agreement?
None.
No questions.
I've reviewed it as well. Any member of the public have questions? Seeing none, I'm prepared to take a motion on the HMLP memorandum of agreement.
I will make a motion to approve and execute the memorandum of understanding between the town of Hingham and the Hingham Municipal Lighting Plant regarding the proposed electrical substation on the town's transfer station property at Old Hobart Street in the form attached hereto.
Second.
Roll call vote, Liz,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and Joe. Aye. Thank you for that point of order. Much appreciated. Now we can move on to the section 147F of the Internal Revenue Code vote that we need for Linden Ponds. Art.
Sorry, Art, you weren't a co-host. You should be able to unmute.
I can now. There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Joe, and members of the board. I appreciate the opportunity to present this item for your consideration this evening, which is to approve the issuance of bonds under provision of IRS section 147F to refinance prior debt and to finance new Linden Ponds project here in Hingham. Earlier today, I did share with you a document that includes an approval of applicable elected representative, which would reflect a favorable vote this evening. It includes a notice of the public hearing that we conducted on Monday, the 14th. It includes evidence of that article being posted in the Patriot Ledger, or that notice being posted in the Patriot Ledger. And last but not least, a transcript of that public hearing that we did conduct. I do want to note that this evening we are joined by several members of the Linden Ponds team, and I would ask that Craig Heron of Whiteford, Taylor and Preston LLP perhaps introduce those folks that have been able to join us this evening.
Art, who are you calling on?
Craig Heron.
I see Craig, but I don't see him. He's muted.
I agree.
There we go.
Hey, good evening. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, excellent. Thank you all so much for allowing us to join this meeting tonight. As Art mentioned, my name is Craig Heron. I'm an attorney down here in Baltimore, Maryland. I work with Linden Ponds and NSC, which is its parent organization. I'm joined tonight. I think it's hard for me to tell exactly who's on at the moment, but it's myself, Alex Dinkles with Marathon Capital Strategies, who's the financial advisor to Linden Ponds and NSC and its communities. We also have Scott Sawicki and Dan Tyler. Scott is the executive director of NSC and Dan is the finance director of NSC. I believe we also have from Linden Ponds itself, Jim Santola, who's the executive director of the community. And from Erickson Senior Living, which is the manager, the day-to-day manager of Linden Ponds, we have John Amonte, Olga Wolfson, and Tony Kuzawinski. As Art noted, we've been working with him to satisfy certain regulations under the IRS code with respect to tax-exempt bond financing. Linden Ponds, as a 501c3, is eligible to take advantage of this tax-exempt bond financing. One of the regulations was what's called the TEFRA regulation, requires certain approvals before the bonds can be issued. In particular, the actual issuer itself needs to approve the bonds, and the jurisdiction in which the facility is located here, which is the town of Hingham, also has to approve the bonds. Approval can't happen until each of those entities have noticed and held a public hearing, which Art noted we did this past Monday. We held the hearing in compliance with the regulations. We had folks from the public attend. It was a conference call due to the COVID guidelines. we had some folks call in, attend, and provide comments.
Craig, if I may, let me run through a quick summary, and I would expect that perhaps members of the select board will have a question or two. Just for background, understanding the need for a hearing, it's focused on the opportunity to provide tax-exempt bond financing to refinance debt, support a new construction at the facility with a not to exceed value for the bonds of $50 million. The bond sale will be facilitated through a national issuer based in Wisconsin known as the Public Finance Authority. About the hearing itself, purpose of which is just to receive comments from interested parties on matters regarding the issuance of bonds on behalf of the borrower. As I said, it was noticed in the Patriot Ledger on the 7th. We also posted it on the town's website on the 11th. We conducted that hearing on the 14th, where we had 3 questions from 2 participants. What we're asking this evening is that based on the information provided, the background that I'm sharing this evening, and perhaps answers to any questions you may have, is to approve that bond issuance. That favorable vote will enable the select board to certify that approval through the memorandum that I shared with you. And I want to stress a few important points here. A favorable vote does not reflect a select board position on the project itself. It does not undo or short circuit or otherwise favor the project in our existing permitting process. A favorable vote does not create financial obligations for the town, and a favorable vote does not impact the town's credit rating. With that background in mind, I guess I would ask for the select board or others to ask any questions with the goal of getting to consideration of a vote on this matter.
So Art, I'll start. So you've told us what our vote does not signify. What does our vote actually signify then?
In a nutshell, it expresses the select board's support for bond financing for the project. I think that the Linden Ponds team can talk in greater detail about the process in terms of securing the bond financing, the hearing, and the results there too, in the select board's comfort level with the project as it stands. Simply enables financing to a step towards bringing financing into a project that can result in new investment in Hingham.
So Art, you mentioned that there was a hearing and that there were, I think, either 3 participants or 3 questions. Would you share with us what the questions were, and then we can proceed from there?
Sure. In short, those questions included asking the project proponent to confirm the additional amount of net debt or net credit that is being sought after paying off existing debt, and the impact to the liquidity and credit rating of Linden Ponds. A resident also asked of the facility, another resident, both people who participated in the hearing were Linden Pond residents, asked whether real estate taxes would increase as a result of the new facility, and also asked whether the expected interest rate on the bonds was known at this time.
So I would be interested in knowing, will real estate taxes increase so that perhaps additional revenue coming into the town?
I think that's a question for us as a town, as opposed to the proponent.
Well, but
by adding new investment and attracting new income, I think there's prospects for ultimately a higher assessed value at the site, which can allow for net additional tax revenues for Hingham.
Did anyone from Linden Ponds want to respond to that? Greg?
Yeah, thanks. I believe, I can't tell if Olga was on, but I know she had looked into this, and perhaps her and Alex had communicated. I'm trying to see if either of them are on at the moment.
Craig, I'm on. It's Alex Dinkles, Principal Marathon Capital, Financial Advisor, Linden Ponds. From what we understand, first and foremost, Linden Ponds is a 501c3, not for profit, and we understand there is an agreement with the town with respect to real estate taxes, and that would be evaluated in connection with this project. So not known at this time, what the impact to taxes would be.
Thank you. Art, did we hear any questions at that hearing questioning whether or not this project moving forward would or would not be in the best interest of the town of Hingham?
We did not.
Okay, I'm going to turn this first to Liz and then to Bill. Liz, any questions?
Great. Thank you, Craig and team. Thank you all for being here. Just to follow up on the residents' questions, what is the process for responding to those questions?
Sure.
This is Jim Pontella. Can you hear me?
We hear you.
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm coming through my phone and not my computer. We have actually had conversations with one of the gentlemen who was asking the questions. He is the head of our resident finance committee, as well as we've had conversations with our RAC chair, resident advisory council chair as well. And we're prepared to answer questions when appropriate and when we're further on in the process with the refinancing. At this point in time, there's many unknowns and many different factors that are going into the process. So to be able to answer their specific questions at this point in time would not be something that we'd be able to do accurately. So we've had those discussions. They understand that. They were very appreciative of the fact that we held the hearing, and as far as the project itself, it's something that I think is very much needed at Linden Ponds, and they are excited about the assisted care project that we're looking at this point.
Great, thank you. So no real questions, Joe. Just want to confirm for the public that this in no way impacts the town's borrowing or our debt capacity or our bond rating. Right?
Yes, this is not a debt of the town of Hingham.
Right.
Correct.
Correct. Thank you.
Bill.
No real questions. Talked with Art today about it. Art, very much appreciate all your hard work here and your research. And I know John Coughlin's been in the loop as well too. So thanks for looking after the town's interests here. I had a lot of questions. Wasn't really sure what was happening here and how the town's interests were served. But I'm comfortable with it. I'm confident we're okay going forward. So no questions at this time.
Okay. What is the maximum stated principal amount of the issue for the bond?
So I think the hearing was held and stated a maximum not to exceed of $50 million for the refinancing and new money component.
Okay. You'll probably guess what I'm doing, which is I'm going through the questions that we need to determine under the IRS rules. So the first one was the maximum stated principal amount. The name of the initial legal owner.
So the obligor for the bonds will be Linden Ponds as part of an obligated group. And they will be the owner of the project. Sorry.
They will be the owner. Okay. And am I correct that the location of the project is entirely within the town of Hingham?
That's correct.
And let's see if there's anything else I need to look at. That's all. Do any members of the public have comments or questions? Seeing none, I am prepared to accept the motion.
I make a motion to authorize the chair to execute an approval of the issuance of private bonds for the Linden Ponds Incorporated project under the provisions of section 147 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, as amended in the form attached here to, which approval shall be limited to the issuance of said private bonds under the provisions of said section 147, and shall not be deemed as granting or approving any other required permits or approvals for said project.
Second.
Been moved in second. Before we do that, I just want to make sure, John, is 147F part of 147, or is it a separate?
Part of 147.
It is. Okay, great.
There's a subsection.
We do a roll call vote then. Liz?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And Joe? Aye. We are approved. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Next, we turn it over to Tom for his COVID-19 update.
Very good. Thank you, Joe. As with the last couple of these, this one is a pretty lengthy one. Bear with me. I'm hoping that soon we will be out of the need for these regular updates. So, however, in the meantime, regarding COVID data, the Department of Public Health is reporting that the 7-day average of confirmed COVID-19 cases has declined substantially from 2,684 on February 7th to 1,550 on February 14th. Statewide hospitalizations have fallen from 1,325 on February 7th to 902 on February 13th. The latest data shows that the Hingham case count is also declining. The DPH reported a 14-day average daily incidence rate of 71 new daily COVID-19 cases in Hingham through February 3rd. And they are reporting a 14-day daily incidence rate of 54 cases in Hingham through February 10th. So that's 54 down from 71. It is important to note that many residents are now taking home-based testing, which is most often not reported and therefore not in these statistics. And as a result, we are assuming that the actual number of positive cases is in fact higher than these statistics show. The overall vaccination rate for Hingham is now 84% for fully vaccinated individuals. That's up from 83 in last week's report. Further, 49% of Hingham residents have received a booster dose. According to the DPH, 79% of Hingham residents ages 5 to 11 are fully vaccinated, and that's up from 68% in the last report. So the kids are now getting up towards that 80% goal for vaccinations, which is great. Regarding our temporary COVID-19 regional testing site, I have decided to close the regional COVID-19 drive-through testing site at 335 Lincoln Street in Hingham, effective February 15th, effective February 15th. That was yesterday. Given ongoing performance issues, closing.
That was 2 days ago.
2 days ago. Sorry. What's today's date? 17th.
17th.
It's February, right, Joe?
That's right.
Given ongoing performance issues, we felt that closing at this time was necessary. We have asked the vendor to reach out directly to residents to cancel any existing appointment and ensure delivery of test results to everyone tested on or before February 14th. Residents who have not received test results by February 19th or feel that they have been incorrectly billed by the vendor should notify the town by either calling us, my office, or by using a fill-in form that is available on our website. Regarding COVID-19 test kit distribution, So the town of Hingham has received over 8,000 rapid antigen test kits from Plymouth County. There are 2 tests per kit for a total of 16,000 total tests available. We have conducted 2 successful distribution days for Hingham residents. On Sunday, February 13th, our team distributed approximately 400 test kits. And on Tuesday, February 15th, we distributed approximately 700 test kits. We are reviewing other options for making the remaining kits available to the community. Regarding restaurant outdoor table service, the outdoor table service program in effect during the COVID-19 state of emergency will expire on April 1st, 2022. While there is a possibility that the legislation may be further extended, we currently anticipate that our zoning regulations for restaurants will go back into effect in April. We encourage all restaurants that have not already contacted us and would like to maintain outdoor table seating approved during the state of emergency to contact Emily Wentworth, and the Community Planning Director, for guidance on any permitting applications that may be required. The Hingham Public Schools Pediatric Vaccination Clinic. So on March 5th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., HPS will be conducting a vaccination clinic at the Hingham Middle School. Vaccinations will be available for eligible Hingham students, and the clinic will be run by the state of Massachusetts and make available Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. Pre-registration is required, and tomorrow HPS will provide clinic information and a link to parents and post this information on their website. Regarding masking policies, so effective September 7th, 2021, I instituted a COVID-19 mask policy acting under Chapter 263 of the Acts of 2016. Under this policy, all individuals age 5 and over, regardless of vaccination status, are required to wear a mask covering the nose and mouth when indoors in non-school municipal facilities, with certain exceptions. On February 14th, Hingham High School moved to a mask optional policy. The entire school district plans to implement a mask optional policy on February 28th. So the high school implemented on February 14th, with the entire school district on the 28th. Recently, I, alongside the Executive Health Officer and our COVID-19 Command Group, continue to evaluate the COVID-19 data and trends. Consistent with discussions of this group, I am currently planning to lift the mask mandate on non-school municipal buildings on March 7th. Regarding public health protocols, please continue to take precautions to protect yourself and others from COVID-19. As we all know, vaccination, wearing face coverings, practicing social distancing, and frequently washing hands, among other measures, help to protect all of us from COVID-19. On January 7th, 2022, the Hingham Board of Health issued a health advisory strongly recommending the use of face coverings by all patrons, visitors, and employees within any indoor space open to the public in Hingham. The health advisory is directed to all visitors and employees within any indoor space in all public places, public housing, assisted living facilities, membership associations, and workplaces in Hingham. The CDC and the Mass DPH guidance on face coverings can be found on their respective websites. The Board of Health recommends the use of N95, KN95, or a woven multiply surgical mask. Woven cloth masks, gaiters, and bandanas provide significantly less protection against this airborne respiratory virus. Also remember that any face covering should be fitted closely to one's skin to prevent unwanted gaps and leaks. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Liz, any questions?
No questions. Thank you, Tom.
Welcome.
Bill?
No questions.
Tom, every time you say Gators, I think the Florida Gators football. And I know that's not what you're referring to.
No.
But thank you. I mean, you really have been on top of this. You have done what it takes to keep this town safe, and we really appreciate it. I know you've got a team behind you, and the executive health officers, been involved, but you have been the master of this. So thank you.
Appreciate it.
Any member of the public with questions for Mr. Mayo? Seeing none, we move to appointments, and I am pleased to say that Jed Ruccio, who is currently an alternate member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, we would like to have him become a full regular member. So I will move to appoint Joseph Ruccio to the Zoning Board of Appeals to fill an unexpired term ending June 30, 2023.
Second.
Roll call vote. Liz,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and Joe. Aye. Approved. Thank you. Now is the time for public comment on items not on the agenda. Are there members of the public with comments? Seeing none, we move to the Town Administrator Select Board reports, starting with Mr. Mayo.
Not tonight. Thank you, Joe.
Michelle Monsinger,
Nothing for me, thank you.
Art Robert.
Nothing to add, thank you.
Does this have anything to do with the fact that we're past 9:30 at this point? Liz Klein,
Nothing to report.
Bill Ramsey,
Just briefly, I want to thank HPD, K-9 officers, Bob Achille, and Ryan Ross for supporting PAC 27. They brought their K-9 dogs to our meeting tonight. Also, Officer Ramsey came. He didn't have a choice. He would have been disinvited to Christmas dinner, but he should be commended as well. So appreciate them coming to our PAC meeting, and the Scouts loved it. So that's it.
great. Thank you, Bill. Just noting, next Monday is President's Day. Wishing everyone a good holiday. And with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Just one thing, Joe. Saturday is Lincoln Day in Hingham.
Oh, yes, we all need to, we'll be there.
Be there.
That's right. Thank you. With that, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
All right, so moved.
Second.
Our roll call vote. Liz,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and Joe. Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you all for your
Good night,
patience.
everybody.